All right, it's getting stupid. Hold on a second. It's getting stupid on me. I don't know why that happens. Still trying to figure that out. All right, everybody. What is up? What is up? What is happening? Give me 1 second there. Give me 1 second. All right, I am back. I am back. I am back. What is happening, everybody? Welcome to another show. I figured tonight, we're going in a bit of a different direction than just the politics, right? Because I've made mention to you guys several times in the past on several shows that this war against the deep state is more than just a political skirmish between two factions vying for power. It's a little bit more than just that. Of course, that's what we see on the surface because that's all our minds could really interpret because of the programming, that the system of programming that we've been born into. We've literally been trained and taught in every facet of our growing up limited thoughts, like we've been raised with limits on reality. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's the analogy of the elephant, where you take the baby elephant and you tie his leg to a stake, in the ground so he can't move too far, and you keep him like that every day until he becomes an adult elephant. When he becomes an adult elephant, you take the tether off his leg and release him from the stake, and he'll still stay in that same area that he was trained to operate in his entire life. That's what they've done to our minds. They've taught us one side of history, one narrative of history, but there's these holes and these inconsistencies, and then there's this whole other side that we're not being told, and there's very few people in the public sphere on social media and on the internet that are willing to talk about it. And upon, when I stumbled upon this idea, it struck a chord in me. It struck a chord in me the same way that flat earth struck a chord in me, right? To the same degree. But with flat earth, it was disbelief. But when it comes to the old world theory, that's what I'll call it, the old world theory, I tend to believe it. Like, my first instinct was to actually believe it. And in doing more digging, doing more research, I must have 100 of these Tartaria videos saved on my Facebook page because I'm studying it and I'm trying to listen to as many people as I possibly can to see how many variations of the story, how many different narratives, how many different timelines, whatever the case may be. And because of my knowledge of the flat earth, that process has been somewhat streamlined, I'd want to say, because now the people that are saying it's space aliens or some shit that built these ancient structures, now I know those theories are bunk because that concept doesn't even exist in the reality of our existence. Now, what I mean by our thought process being limited from birth, right? From the time you're little, you're taught about the globe. You're taught Earth is a ball. You see it all over TV. You're taught about it in school. And then in knowing the establishment, in knowing that somewhere along the lines, you're going to hear something about the Earth being flat because these pesky flat earthers won't go away and they won't shut up, right? They put that mental block in your mind very early on at a very young age before you're even old enough to question it. And they teach it to us with the famous line I always like to quote: a long time ago, our ancestors were primitive and thought the earth was flat, but now we have modern technology and we know better and we know that earth is round. That's the way they teach it to us. When the way they should be teaching it to us is, well, in the modern era, we're taught that the earth was round, but a long time ago, people were primitive and believed the earth was flat. But here's what they actually believed. You feel what I'm saying? Like, that would seem more educational than indoctrinational. Would it not? It sure does to me, because at least now we're getting a glimpse into what these ancient people actually believed and their concept of the cosmos. Excuse me. Sorry. But you see, they won't teach us that side of things, because if we were to learn about that side of the narrative, the false narrative that they've been giving us our whole lives is instantly going to fall apart, because there's too many holes, too many lies, too many inconsistencies on that side of things. But when it comes to what our ancestors actually believed, it was consistent, and it actually made sense. And when I say what our ancestors believe, I don't know who Truth Warrior is. People say a lot of shit. I don't know who that is, and I really don't care what they say, but whatever. You know. Just put it like this. Truth Warrior can call himself whatever he wants to call himself, but make no mistake about it. His research pales in comparison to my research, and it's all on video. So, like I said, they can say whatever they want. But anyway, in studying what our ancestors actually believed, which was all based on flat earth cosmology, it starts to make sense how ancient people so long ago could build these structures that modern science can't seem to re-engineer. Because then you realize these people had the truth. These people knew what kind of canvas they were painting on. These people understood the true nature of our earthly existence and were able to utilize every resource available to us here on earth. And not only utilize every resource, but make it somewhat renewable to where the wealth and the prosperity and the comforts that were generated from the harvesting of these resources became renewable. It became almost endless, infinite. Everybody was okay. Certain things that exist in the world today that we don't like crime and poverty and that type of stuff, didn't really exist like that. Sickness, chronic illnesses, all that bullshit, it didn't really exist like that. And then in understanding that side of the narrative, right? And when I say resources available to us, I mean not only the food, the water, the air, I'm talking about the energy within the earth. They understood the nature of the earth because they understood that the earth was a giant source of energy. And they figured out ways somehow, some way, a very long time ago, way longer than we're even led to believe. They figured out a way to harvest that energy or harness that energy and use it to power their lights, power their machines, power their existence. And when we look at these big megalithic structures with these giant stones that little humans couldn't move, and we can't move today with all the big mega machinery that we have, you start to think about other fields of science like resonance, for example, the use of frequencies to manipulate matter. Every piece of matter has a frequency. And if you create a machine that can generate sound at the frequency to match whatever object you're aiming it at, it will actually start to move the atoms around in that object, essentially liquefying it and giving it the appearance of it melting. It's almost like if you build a pyramid of sand, just pure sand, and you put it on a flat board and you lay that board on top of a speaker and you turn on the bass. Every time the bass hits, that sand is going to flatten out, flatten out, flatten out, flatten out. And if you leave it there long enough, it's going to completely flatten out until it forms a certain pattern. I'm sure you guys have seen those experiments being done. But essentially, with this ability to harness the energy from the earth, the possibilities of creation by the hands of man were endless. And that's even evident today when we look around at these historic buildings and these government buildings and these cathedrals. This is kind of like, this is the stuff that we see. We see all this intricate detail, this magnificent concrete work that modern technology cannot mimic. And we wonder, and then we think back to the narrative that they taught us and the shit they show us in the movies where people were riding on horsebacks and traveling and transporting things with horse and buggy and all this shit and fighting with spears and bows and arrows and you know what I'm saying? And then you fast forward to the cannons and the muskets and you look at this and you're like, so wait a minute. They had the ability to build something as magnificent as this, but they couldn't build cars, planes, cell phones. They couldn't do any of that, though. They ain't know how to do any of that. And then it makes you really scratch your head and wonder, like, what's really going on here? Like, what is really happening here? So, looking back at these historical buildings, you have to wonder who were these people that, well, constructed this stuff. And then you'll come across the Tartarian Empire and the Tartarian Kingdom. And the Tartarians seem to be throughout history non-existent. The same history that they teach us in school about the earth being round is the same history curriculum that has completely omitted the existence of the Tartarian Empire. So now you have to do your own research and find out who these people were, where they came from, and what were they actually capable of. And in studying the Tartarian history, which I've done, and I've got it in several streams, I even have an example, a screenshot of one of those streams that I need you guys to go check out to get a deeper look into the old world, as we call it. And you'll find that the Tartarian Empire was a vast empire that spread throughout the entire world. Now, what was the racial makeup of these people? I don't know. And honestly, I don't care. But where the empire was said to have originated was somewhere in Eastern Europe, Western Russia, right around where the Khazars started at. And the Tartarians were men of renown. They were people that knew how to do shit. And they spread their influence somehow throughout the whole world. And everywhere in the world you go today, you see cathedrals that look like that. You see buildings with domes and all this fancy stonework that nobody can mimic today. And you see those spires on the tops of the buildings. And it seems to be eerily similar all around the world. But something happened because there were more buildings like these all over. When you go to those big old cities like New York City, you'll see a lot of the modern buildings. And if you look closely enough, you'll see remnants of the old world building like embedded in it, where they like took parts of the building, kept the original parts, modified it with new sections and all that shit. But you could still see it. And there's a guy on Facebook that goes around in New York City, and he's filming all these buildings in the middle of the city. And sure enough, it looks like Tartarian architecture. Now, the time frame for the existence of the Tartarian Empire, I'm not exactly sure, but they were around in the 15, 16, 17, and some even say up until the 1800s. And the 1800s was when it all changed. The 1800s was when they said the Great Reset happened. And there is a book written by somebody way back in the day. I got to do some more research on that, but it talks about the so-called quote unquote the day the night or the day the stars fell and the summer with no sun. And it talks about some sort of major cataclysm that happens in the 1800s in North America. Now, people all over the earth around the same time also mention seeing some sort of cataclysmic event in the sky and having limited sunlight for a very long period of time. And this was very interesting because the people who have studied the Tartarian Empire a lot deeper than I have, they claim that this cataclysm was the event that people refer to some refer to now as the mud floods, which caused the Great Reset. But the mud floods weren't exactly some sort of natural cataclysm. The mud floods were caused by one of those resonance machines that can manipulate matter and make it seem to melt. And the only way a device, whether it be a microwave device or a resonance device or whatever, the only way a device that powerful to cause that much damage around the earth could exist is if, one, there were several of those devices planted all around the world, or two, it was one giant device that used an immense amount of electricity to even power it. So when you look at certain cities like New York City, Chicago, a lot in the Northeast, right? Well, Chicago's not really in the Northeast, but like in Boston and shit like that, you'll see these buildings on hills. But if you look closely at the bottom of the building, you'll see like windows kind of like, covered up. And they're at an angle, which means that was a whole nother floor to that building that's now underground. So the theory is, and there's been other buildings that were deeply buried underground that have been unearthed throughout the years. And on the next show, when we talk about the old world, I'll show you some more of those images. In fact, I got 2 videos that I downloaded and they're in my email. So I'm going to have to go back to my email at some point in the show and pull those videos. Maybe I'll do that towards the end. But what we're going to talk about tonight it's got more to do with the transition, the Great Reset, and how the world went from what we see in these images to what we see today, the big square boxes. And it actually happened in a very, very short period of time. Because if this Great Reset happened in the 1800s, that means it happened after 1776. And 1776 ties into it because 1776 was a rebellion of Masons from the king that wanted to form their own nation, which was America, with their own rules, which was the Constitution. They didn't want a king, one man making all the rules for everybody. They wanted every group in the land to be represented. And that group of representatives get together and they make the decisions. Because if each representative of each group makes the decision, they're essentially making that decision on behalf of the group. So that's the people governing by proxy. Our elected representatives are our proxy, our proxy lawmakers. Thus, whatever they do or whatever we want, they should do, which means in turn, everything they do should be something that would benefit we the people and something that we the people would actually agree with. And there was a very short period of time when America was like that. And then something happened where the same people that wanted to keep the colonies under the monarchy infiltrated that constitutional government, turned it into a corporation, and reinstituted monarchical rule. And now we have the political and economic system that we have today. But what's happening now with this political war is the forces that caused the Great Reset so they could put themselves in power are the same forces that are in power today. And the same forces that were opposing those powers in the past and keeping them at bay and keeping this technology out of their hands so they couldn't cause the Great Reset, those same forces are at war with them again today. But because So many wars were lost because we won the war in 1776, founded America, and America is here. But America got re-infiltrated. So essentially, as Americans, we lost that war for independence because we no longer have our independence. And that's proof by the amount of imports we bring into the country. We are dependent. And what we see in America is there's a president that the entire mainstream establishment system absolutely hates. And they hate him so much that they've planted people inside the truth movement to hate him too, to make it seem like the hate is universal and everybody should hate him because he's just this bad, evil guy. I've never seen such a desperate hate campaign in my life. And because I know the hate is coming from the forces that caused the Great Reset and enslaved our ancestors and enslaved us ever since, I'm going to side with the guy they hate. Fuck what you're talking about. Vladimir Putin has also been a longtime enemy of the establishment, has been hated for a long time, and has always been painted as an enemy of America. And when the deep state was in control, he was an enemy of America because he was an enemy of the deep state. And in his, just like in his country, just like in America, in his country, that deep state had embedded themselves with the major corporate monopolies. They had their infiltrators in the government, in the military. And over the years, once Trump got elected in 2016, Vladimir Putin started carrying out his domestic purge. A lot of people got fired from the Russian government. A lot of spies got caught and arrested and locked up, and shit went nuts in Russia for a while. And all that was left after that was the corporate monopolies. And how did Putin get the corporate monopolies out? Well, with Trump's help. How did Trump help him? Trump allowed the Biden goons to steal the 2020 election, put themselves in power with the auto pen, and use Joe Biden as a puppet, as a proxy to pretend as if he exists. It's Joe Biden who's been long gone, not Trump. And I got hours and hours of streams on that showing you the pictures and the receipts, right? And while this was happening, they had no control of the military, the Biden goons. So Vladimir Putin was greenlit to move on Ukraine and start rescuing the kids in Ukraine and start working on beating back the Ukrainian government out of Russian territory. And when that happened, of course, the entire fake news establishment that's in league with the Ukraine and all the criminal, wicked shit they do over there, they started vehemently defending Ukraine all over social media. Remember, everybody had their blue and yellow flags on their profiles? Yeah, fuck that. Those are the sheep. Those are the NPCs. And Vladimir Putin kept up his assault on Ukraine, and the major corporate monopolies, thinking that they were going to cripple the Russian economy, they decided to cut off all business in Russia and move out of Russia. The major airlines, the banks, the marketing firms, all the corporations that were tied to the Rothschild banking system that were in league with the criminal shit that was going on in Ukraine. They all just up and left. So Vladimir Putin essentially wiped out their domestic ability to commit terrorist attacks and retaliation against his actions. And then he took military action against one of their safe havens for their pedophilia. And they, in turn, decided to cut themselves off from the Russian market. As soon as that happened, Russian airlines started filling those empty slots at the airports. Russian corporations started taking over those. Russian restaurants started taking over those McDonald's buildings and Starbucks buildings and shit. And Russian companies that were being forced out of the market because of these international monopolies, they now had a chance to become the big players in Russia, and now the wealth is being spread around more evenly amongst the people who choose to be productive. So essentially, Vladimir Putin has purged Russia of the deep state. Now, here in America, we have a bit of a similar situation, but it's a lot more complex because in Russia, there's more people in Russia that really know who the enemy is. So they can't spread their propaganda and brainwash the people in Russia like they can here in the United States. Because here in the United States, there aren't enough people who know who the real enemy is. So they're brainwashed by the enemy, and the enemy has them actually hating the one man that's trying to destroy the system that's enslaving them. So Trump's challenges are a little bit harder than Vladimir Putin's challenges, because Vladimir Putin had a population that was more awake than Trump's population. And because Trump's population is so heartily asleep and brainwashed by the enemy, that there's now millions and millions of foot soldiers ready to be recruited to serve that enemy if ever called and paid handsomely to do so. So now your risk of domestic terrorist attacks increases. Now your risk of nationwide destabilization increases. Because you know who these people are. You see their voter registrations. You see their social media profiles. You know who these people are. And this is why the military is being deployed in those cities, to go after those people. And I've shown you guys the articles. People making threats and planning shit online, and then, actually buying the equipment and planning to go out and do shit. You got politicians calling for violence against ICE officers. So we know that these enemy combatants and potential enemy combatants exist amongst the population, the enemies within the gates. So Trump has to make his moves against their beloved establishment more in secret, and every once in a while throw them a bone. Let them get a little scandal so they can start spreading the lies and make themselves look stupid. So yeah, let's go after these FBI agents that are holding up the Epstein files, and that'll hold up the Epstein files for a little while, and watch them lose their fucking minds. And what happened? The liberal establishment started losing their fucking minds. And what that did for Trump was that got him to weed out the ones that would turn against him. Marjorie Taylor Greene turned against him because it became a Democrat narrative that Trump's hiding the Epstein files because he's in the Epstein files. That was the Democrats that created that narrative and put out that narrative. Because everybody in their right minds know that Trump's not in the Epstein files, because from the moment Trump decided to arrest Epstein, you should have known he ain't down with Epstein, because if he was, he would have done the same thing every other president did, act like the man didn't even exist. He could have done that. And if he was in league with Jeffrey Epstein, him having Jeffrey Epstein prosecuted actually runs the risk of them exposing the blackmail. But they haven't exposed any blackmail yet. All the pictures and videos are AI. They're fake. And I showed you that on a previous stream. So now you got people calling themselves patriots and conservatives and saying they support the president and they support the mission. But when the mission gets tough, they jump ship. You can't have those people in your circle if you're going up against the most powerful entities in the world that have been controlling the world for thousands of years. You can't have people like that around you. And this is why Q reminded us in the beginning to trust the plan. If the plan was going to be something we could see the whole time, they wouldn't have to remind us to trust the plan. The reason why they reminded us to trust the plan is because there would be times when you would find yourself doubting the plan. But it's part of the plan. There's certain phases in the operations where you got to let them have it and let them expose themselves and watch them cheer for the violence. And, so more and more people can see who these propagandists really are, who they're really getting their information from, and is this and is what this person's standing for, telling me I should stand for, something I actually want to stand for. And it's happening. Like, for example, think about all the women that were screaming with trans rights as women's rights. Now they're seeing these big ass hairy men in dresses walking in the bathrooms with them and their little daughters in the bathrooms. We're seeing sexual assaults happening in the bathrooms. And those same women that were helping to push the delusion are now coming to their senses, and they're now waking up. But because they're so deeply brainwashed, that's what it took. That's what it took. Again, this is not your run-of-the-mill every 4 years political game. This is an international, worldwide mission to take down the most powerful entity in the world that has been controlling the world longer than we've been alive. And Trump and Putin, part of Trump's play is to position himself as an enemy of Putin and let the fake news run with that narrative. Because if Trump and Putin are allies and they're working a plan together, the best way for the plan to remain secret and remain hidden from the enemy is to continue to give the enemy the impression that you're not working together. Because if the enemy truly believes that you're not working together, the thought of you and that enemy having a plan to work together would never cross their minds. So the illusion of enmity, it works perfect in this scenario. And it's working on Venezuela because the Russians showed up in Venezuela and the news passed it off as if it was the Russians going there to defend against the Americans. But it wasn't. It was one Russian ship that went into the area. I believe that Russian ship was dropping off some personnel that were going to work on the inside because Maduro believes that they're his allies and they're against Trump. So now Trump's got people on the inside by way of the Russians. See how that works? And it's funny because this article that I got this picture from, wait till you see the headline. You're going to see what I'm talking about. Because remember, think about everything you've heard about Trump and Putin, America and Russia in the last 10 years. From the mainstream media, that is, and from the bigger platforms, the more mainstream platforms. What have you been hearing from them? America is bracing for war against Russia. There might be a war against Russia, war against Russia, war against Russia. That's what we've been hearing. And what have I been saying? Ain't gonna be no goddamn war against Russia. Because Russia and America are allies. America is allied with the BRICS. Because what the BRICS have been doing recently is also part of the plan. Moving away from the economic system of the world controllers and create their own economic system, which is the quantum financial system. And they already have their international central bank, which is the BRICS Development Bank. Now they have a bank that can compete with the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. And in the past years, all those BRICS nations that were switching to gold-backed currency, the minute they started talking about it, all the presidents that were cool with Epstein, a war would break out in that country. That president would get removed, and then a puppet president would be installed, and boom, back to business. And this explains the war in Vietnam, the war in Korea, the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, the wars in Libya, Syria, and everywhere else. That's what they were doing, keeping these countries on their banking system. So the BRICS Development Bank couldn't compete with the World Bank. because the member nation, they wouldn't have enough member nations to even formulate an entity that can compete with the World Bank. They would all be stuck using the dollar instead of gold-backed currency, which will devalue the dollar. And America remained on top. The dollar didn't lose its value, at least not as much. But what happened under Trump, when Trump said no more foreign hostile military actions, that's what he was referring to. No more war, no more wars to stop nations from doing what they want to do with their own currency and their own economy. And as a result, all those African countries that wanted to switch to gold but were afraid of an American invasion or a proxy invasion by some Mossad CIA funded terrorist organization, they decided to hold off. And then when Trump came into office, boom, they started switching to gold. And they started joining the BRICS because now America is not using its military to stop them. And that's a big step in the fight against the world powers. And what's happening in America, we're going to be the last to cross the finish line in this war. Because what has to happen in America is the transition from the fiat currency to a gold-backed currency, and then engagement with the quantum financial system and open trade lines with the BRICS nations. But the way that's going to have to happen is through Nasara, where the national treasury absorbs the Federal Reserve, strips the power of the currency from the Federal Reserve, uses our gold reserves as a valuation for the dollar amount they're going to allow into the economy, and boom, you have a gold-backed currency. Also, what's going to happen is once we swap to a gold-backed currency, all these other countries that are depending on the exports that they sell to America and we import from them, their fiat currency, if they're still using it, won't be any good anymore. So all the debts they owe in that currency will be null and void. And they're going to be forced to switch to a gold-backed currency if they haven't already, because we're not taking nothing but them gold receipts, baby. That's it. And once they switch to a gold-backed currency, all their fiat debts are evaporated, and it's back to business. And when the trade lines open up with the BRICS nations, there's going to be more demand throughout the world for American products, which will boost American production, because now those goods and those products that are being produced aren't only being produced to be consumed by the Americans within America, but they'll also have to produce more because consumption of those products will be happening overseas as well. Which means further economic growth. And that economic growth is what's going to spur what Trump calls the golden age. Remember, Trump talked about that? He said the best is yet to come, and he's bringing America back to the golden age. Remember, he said that? He didn't say he's bringing us forward to a golden age. He said he's bringing us back to the golden age. And the golden age that he's talking about, I believe, is the time when people had the knowledge of the earth and the ability to harness the energy from the earth to do some of the most magnificent things. And you see, when you have that kind of energy, the responsibility that comes with that is the responsibility to not use it for evil. But of course, evil people also had access to this technology because it was free and accessible to everybody. And those evil people use that technology to destroy that civilization and rebuild one of their own where they were in control, and the secrets of this technology and this energy would remain with them, while the rest of the people in the world, would be brainwashed into believing a false history. And that also happened. And it happened right here in America, I believe. But you fast forward to today, what Trump is trying to do, you see, he's been very aggressive on crime, been baiting all the scammers with the government giveaway money, playing along with the COVID shit, right? He's getting rid of the illegal aliens, the criminal aliens, cutting off the drug money. He's doing everything he can to strip the power from the wicked, because you'll never be able to have a golden age in your economy if you still have people in your society who are intent on getting over on the next man, not making a fair deal and making a fair trade, selling someone something subpar at premium prices. Those are the people that will fuck up the golden age, because if their business model is successful, they will accumulate more wealth than they should have had they played fair. And then they will essentially find a way to gain control of that particular market. And that's essentially what happened with the international elites and their ancestors when they took over the world, caused the great reset, set everybody else back to the Stone Age, and retained the secrets of the old world. Even claimed stakes of ownership on the remnants of the old world. Yeah, apparently there's been several resets, and the one that happened in the 1800s was the most recent, and I believe 2020 was another attempt at a great reset, because they literally try to make us believe what we have known scientifically about human biology and how diseases spread and how immunity works. They literally try to make the entire world believe otherwise. And you know what would have happened if the entire world believed otherwise? There'd be people lining up to get shot in the arm with a biological weapon. Oh, wait, it did happen. Holy cow, it happened. How you like that? But anyway, before we get started, like we haven't gotten started already. Oh, wrong way. Make sure you guys go subscribe to the backup channel. If you haven't subscribed to the backup channel, please go do it. The link is in the description box. Also, follow me on Rumble. If you haven't followed me on Rumble, that's where you'll find all the deep research and the great content that you'd have to miss on YouTube, because YouTube would censor it. So get on over to Rumble and check out the stuff you can't see on YouTube. It's absolutely free. It's a platform just like YouTube. It's absolutely free. There's no paywall. And if you want to leave a like, share, comment, or whatever, it's the same as YouTube. Just got to create a Rumble account, have a Gmail account or whatever. I don't even know if it has to be Gmail, but create a Rumble account and come on over to the channel. Give me a follow, give me a like, shit like that. Also, last but not least, if you guys would like to support the show, you could do so by sending in a kind donation via Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo using the tag scrolling across the screen in the banner below, the links that are pinned to the top of the YouTube chat in the black box where it says Citizen Man TV in yellow. Just click the yellow, the box opens up, and all the links are there. All the links will be there. And you can also find those links posted in the description box of every video on YouTube and Rumble. All right. No, wrong way. So tonight's topic is future proves past. There was never supposed to be an old world, an old or new world, but an everlasting one. And the reason why I say that is because if you remove the wicked people from history that caused the resets and the Tartarian Empire and their influence all around the world and this harnessing of free energy and this true knowledge of the earth had continued without the Great Reset cutting off that knowledge and hiding it from the people, these buildings that have stood for thousands of years would still be standing 1,000 more years. So there would have been no new world enough for us to look back and say, hey, look at the old world. All it would have been was the world, because the world was built to last. You know, like the Bible says, from everlasting to everlasting. So what Trump is trying to do and what Putin and the rest of the patriots around the world are trying to do is bring the world back to the golden age of the old world. But the only way that can be done is for the wicked forces in high places and the wicked hearts and minds amongst the people in the low places. We have to have a purge of that. And we have to have a society of people that operate at a higher consciousness, that think 1,000 years ahead rather than think about tomorrow or next week or next month. We have to have people that think long term and understand the benefits of short-term suffering for long-term gain. We also have to have people that are willing to stand up and say, no, that's not true. This is what it is. And 2020 proved to us that we did not have enough of those types of people. Because had we had more people like that, the mask shit wouldn't have worked. The vaccine shit wouldn't have worked. The whole death number bullshit wouldn't have worked. And their entire attempt at a reset would have fallen flat. No, T. Wriggles, I have not seen your lunch break YouTube channel on this subject. But I will definitely check it out. And if you got something to share, I would gladly have you on to come talk about it, man. I'll take a back seat and let you cook. And if you got any images or slides or whatever, you can email them to me and I can pull them up on the show as you elaborate. And I can stream it on your channel too. So, yeah, we could do that for sure. So the bad energy has to be purged from society. And that's exactly what's happening right now. And people have to have a deeper understanding of economics other than just rich and poor. Because rich and poor are not fixed states. A poor man can get rich and a rich man can go poor. So we have to start thinking between those two elements, like how do you become poor? How do you get rich? And with a society of people thinking like that, it'll spawn a generation of thinkers, innovators, inventors, and just overall productive people. But you keep people thinking in this duality state of mind of rich and poor, good and bad, black and white. They never have time to innovate because they're too busy choosing a side. They never solve the real problem because they only see the opposite end of the spectrum as the problem. So essentially, they intellectually pigeonhole themselves and stifle their own ability to innovate and grow. And then what happens over the generations is we end up with a society that gets dumber and dumber by the generation. Exactly what we're seeing happening in America right now. So all this needs to be done in order to return America back to the golden age, back to the ways of the old world. Because the ways of the old world was solid. The construction lasted thousands of years. The sacred geometry and the divine mathematics was utilized to build a world that's everlasting, because even through the resets, the mud floods, the cataclysms, whatever the case was that caused the reset, these structures still survive and still stand as a testament in contradiction to everything we've been taught about history. So now we must question it. And question it we shall. Question it we shall. So let me stop screen share. Open up my gallery. Because now I need the slides that work in order. There we go. You guys can see that? Yep. Because I can see it. If you can see, if I can see it, you can see it. All right. So slide 1 is that headline I was telling you about. And this was posted by Steve Bannon. And it says, the Orthodox Christian Russia and the Western Christian America, the gravitational pull of Christendom coming together to stand against the Islamists, Marxists, atheists, secularists, transhumanists. And the headline at the bottom says, Russia hails Trump's new national security strategy as consistent with our vision. Now pay attention to the verbiage. He doesn't say it's consistent with our strategy like, oh, kudos, you're employing the same tactics we are. No, he says our strategy, Trump's strategy, is consistent with Russia's vision. And Russia is fulfilling their vision. And what was their vision? What I explained to you earlier. Getting rid of the traitors in the government. Getting rid of the foreign agents and the spies in the government and in the corporations. And then getting rid of the corporate monopolies as well. Making way for the small businesses. The most nationalist thing any president can do. That was Russia's vision. And if Trump's strategy is consistent with Russia's vision, that means Trump's vision is quite similar to Putin's, which means at the end of all this, that's what we're going to see. And just so you know, Russia's economy is booming. They are getting it in right now. So that's where Trump plans to take us. Now, let's go all the way back to the origins of the enemies. Humanity. This is the North Pole right here. And this is Mercator's map. This map was drawn in 1490. And in 1505 or 1495, I'm sorry. And then 10 years later in 1505, this pygmy island right here, the bottom half of it was completely underwater. This big island was broken into several islands because parts of it was underwater. These islands were gone. And some sort of cataclysmic event had happened in this region around 1505, between 1495 and 1505. That was when humanity that started here at the center, and this is the mountain in the middle of the 4 rivers, and this used to be the Garden of Eden. After whatever event it was that happened, the age of exploration began. You guys remember the age of exploration started around what? 1492 with Christopher Columbus. Ain't that what they taught us? So let's go with their numbers and the numbers on the maps. So the age of exploration began, and people started leaving the North Pole and traveling out into the outer lands. As shown here, let me go to the other gallery really quick. Got to stop the share again. I hope it doesn't goof up on me. So here, the people spread out from the center and started exploring the earth from here all the way around. Now, this has been a cycle that had been repeating since the beginning of time, right? So there had been people here at the North Pole before, and they spread out. So there were civilizations already all around the world. And when these explorers, these last explorers left the North Pole, they then came into the world and started writing history and all that shit. And that's why most of the history, especially from this part of the world, that we're taught in the mainstream doesn't really go too far back past 1000 AD. Now, they left out a lot of shit because around that time, the Tartarian Empire had built themselves up, and the people in this center of the earth right here, before the cataclysm happened, the people at the North Pole, they were living their golden age. They had their big monolithic buildings and structures built and all that shit, and they had their free energy devices harnessing the energy, and some say that was part of the reason why the cataclysm occurred. Mind you, around the same time, years, maybe centuries back, this was where the Garden of Eden used to be until the people started eating the animals, and the animals started to deplete. The depletion of the animals in turn caused the depletion of the fruit, the propagation of the fruit trees, and so the food supply started to dwindle, and people became dependent on the meat. It happened here. So then they started experimenting with the free energy and doing all kinds of weird shit they shouldn't have been doing. And then boom, cataclysm, they all had to leave. Food was running out anyway, so they all had to leave. So they leave, they spread out throughout the earth. They reestablished their empire. There's good people and there's bad people amongst them. And the bad people happen to keep the secrets of the free energy, use the secrets of the free energy to cause cataclysms, take over the world, rebuild the world under a new system that they completely control, and boom. There we have it. How we got there, how we got here from the beginning of true human history. That's what I call it. So now, the good people who were enslaved by the bad people, because the bad people used the secrets of the technology for warfare rather than for peace and sustainability, and they used those weapons of warfare to target the people who also had the technology but were using it for peace and sustainability in order to strip them of their sustainability, thus making them dependent on the ones with the technology. You know, the energy companies, the banks. So once the majority of the populations around the world became dependent on the people with the resources and the ability to harness the energy, those folks then every couple of years or every couple of centuries would pull off a major cataclysm to reduce the population, to keep the people dumbed down. They did things to pollute the earth, pollute the atmosphere, shorten our lifespans, so nobody lives to be old enough to be able to tell about the old world. And if they do live to be old enough, their minds are so shot they don't even remember their name, much yet what they saw 100 years ago. So they created their system of enslavement. And now their system of enslavement is being destroyed. And is being destroyed because we have President Trump and President Putin, both of whom have the ability to harness this energy. And they have access to that technology. And that's what they're using to defeat the deep state on the physical front, on the psychological front, and on the spiritual front. And what's being done is the rulers of the world, whose ancestors were the destroyers of the old world, their descendants are now being removed from power, and the people of the world are being put back in power. And once the people of the world retake their power, the technology will then be made available to us so we can rebuild the world the way it used to be. Bringing back the old world. That's why in the title I wrote Future Proves Past. Because if what we talk about the old world in the past, if that golden age is what we call the truth, then what we should see in the future, if future proves past, is exactly that. A golden age similar to that of the Tartarian Empire. So this is essentially the resurgence of the Tartarian Empire. And a large portion of that Tartarian Empire existed here in America. Now, these are some illustrations. Oh, shit. These are some illustrations of those buildings and that architecture. And you see the domes. A lot of those domes are made with copper inlays, if not fully copper. The spires also have copper and other conductive materials in them. And these buildings were said to be energy plants that were designed where the foundation was grounded to the earth for the negative charge, and the spires were high up in the sky catching the wind for the positive charge. And together with the ground and the spire, they were able to generate electricity and illuminate these buildings and illuminate a large area around these buildings. Hence, you had cities popping up around these huge energy centers. These were your ancient power plants that were being utilized all the way up until the 1800s when the reset happened. And I believe the reset happened because too many people were becoming energy independent, thus becoming independent and no longer depending on the establishment, when the entire establishment was built on dependence. Remember, they stole the technology from the people, from the ancestors of the people. They hid the technology from the people in order to make the people dependent on them for energy. So if you have too many people not depending on them for energy because they can harness it themselves, well, something's got to be done. We got to stop this. We got to shut this shit the fuck down. And that is exactly what they did. Now, another thing that most people don't know about recent history is when commercial airplane flights became popularized around late 20s, 1930-ish, right? The Wright brothers did it in 1901 with the first flight or whatever. But it wasn't until about 20 or 30 years later when commercial planes started being used, and we have the air travel system that we have today, which is hardly as efficient and much, much more dangerous. Because if a plane falls out of the sky and you're on it, guess what? You're falling out of the sky with it, bub. But up until the early 1900s, the early 20th century, blimps were used for air travel. It's a little known fact. A lot of people don't know that. Blimps were used for air travel. And these blimps were efficient and they weren't very costly because the energy needed to power them was harnessed from the spires of the tall buildings. And what happened was the controllers needed to get rid of blimp travel because the blimps would use that technology to harness the energy from the spires off the tall buildings, and they would charge their batteries, and they would use batteries to power motors, and the motors would then produce electricity to create electrolysis, which, created hydrogen and oxygen and allowed the blimps to float and whatnot. And, there was a lot that went into it, and they were a lot more complex than, let's say, the Goodyear blimp. And something had to be done because the use of this technology could not even be known to the general public. So they had to replace blimp travel with airplane travel. So they staged the Hindenburg event. And the Hindenburg event was a huge scare tactic where they deliberately crashed a blimp full of people, killed a bunch of people, a bunch of other people survived. And the fear that generated got people to stop traveling by blimp. And then everybody got on those flying tin cans we call airplanes, which are much more dangerous than the blimp, because the blimp crashed and burned, but people survived. Planes crash and burn all the time. Nobody ever survives. It's a rarity that somebody survives a plane crash. So this was, one of the older propaganda pieces where they stage an event, create fear, capitalize on that fear to get people to agree to give up the last remnant of their ancestors and depend on their systems. See how the game goes? And this is an image of a blimp or a rendering. I don't know if it's a photograph or if it's a drawing and a painting or whatever it is, but it's an image of a blimp with the tip touching the very top of the Empire State Building. And if you look closer, you'll see the boarding dock here, and you see people actually boarding the blimp. And what the blimp's doing up here is it's recharging. Recharging. No generators, no power plants, no nothing. Just pure earth energy. Electricity. So let's take a look at some facts about the Hindenburg disaster. The Hindenburg disaster was an airship accident that occurred on May 6, 1937 in Manchester Township, New Jersey, United States. The LZ-129 Hindenburg Luftschiff Zeppelin 129, registration DLZ 129, was a German commercial passenger carrying rigid airship, the lead ship of the Hindenburg class, the longest class of flying machine, and the largest airship by envelope volume. Filled with hydrogen, it caught fire and was destroyed during its attempt to dock with a mooring mast at a Naval Air Station, Lakehurst. The accident caused 35 fatalities, 13 passengers and 22 crewmen. Among the 97 on board, 36 passengers and 61 crewmen. So out of 36 passengers, 13 died. And out of 61 crewmen, 22 died. That 13 and that 61 kind of raises my antennas. I don't know about you. And an additional fatality on the ground. So needless to say, the blimps were used for air travel. A blimp crashed with people on it, and not every single person died. Sounds a lot safer than an airplane to me. But they destroyed it to generate fear, to keep people out of those blimps so they could get on those airplanes. I think that was another reset of the air travel industry. Now, for an excellent breakdown of the old world to the new world, go check out this stream right here on Rumble. Just go to my Rumble page, go to the search bar and type in ancient technology, and you should see this stream pop up. Ancient technology to modern slavery, conquering our world by captivating our minds. You guys should definitely go check this one out. It's over on Rumble. I strongly recommend it. I strongly recommend it, and I can't say it enough. Go check it out. I also strongly recommend that y'all hit the Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo and support the show. Support's looking kind of light. I know Christmas coming, but goddamn it, you got $1. All must give. You forgot? All must give. Now, somewhere along the lines from this beautiful old world, we ended up with barely any remnants of it. Now, this is a cathedral. I believe this cathedral is in Italy, if I'm not mistaken, but it's the largest cathedral in the world. Look at the size of those doorways. And I believe the people that built these structures were a lot larger than we are today, too. They were a lot healthier. Because all the chemicals and shit that we've been fed our whole lives from birth, it stunted our growth. As I drink Red Bull. But I got to stay awake for this. I can't fall asleep or start losing my train of thought. This is too good. And aside from these monolithic structures with the spires and, the intricate details, extremely intricate details, we also see these rock formations out in the wilderness that seem to resemble these cathedral-like structures. And some say part of the Great Reset was using a resonance device to basically liquefy these structures and turn them into what we see now. Big stone structures that just look weird for no reason. Now, there's another theory that these are broken off tree trunks from giant trees, but I'm starting to lean away from that, but it could be possible. It could be possible. Here's another one. This one looks like it used to be a huge cathedral. Look at this guy right here, how little he is. I don't know if y'all can see him at the bottom. You probably can't. My banner's in the way. Hold on. Let me see if I can take it away. You see the little guy down there in the bottom in the red? That's a person standing there. So that looks like one of those structures, but it was hit with some sort of resonance weapon that made it melt. Here is a picture from overhead of an entire, what looks to be, it used to be an entire city. This definitely has some man-made geometry to it. And it looks like these were big cathedral buildings that were melted. So somebody got a hold of the technology and they either misused it and caused an accidental cataclysm, or they used it on purpose to destroy their perceived enemies, thus destroying themselves in the process. And we see images like this all around the world, these castles on the top of these huge mountains and shit. But what if this entire mountain used to be the castle, but it melted? Because we see a lot of these weird rock formations with what appears to be doorways and windows. Maybe these were structures that were melted down too. Look, this looks like it's molded right into the rocks. Because maybe this whole rock formation was a structure, and that little piece right there is all that remains of it. Here's another one. This one is in Georgia, in Eastern Europe. These mountainsides with all these holes, these used to be those big buildings, and they melted. Look at that. It looks like it melted. You can tell. Look at that. Look at that. It looks like it either melted or sunk down into the earth. Look, there's walls there. Walls, walls, walls. So something happened. Here's another one. These are steps leading up to the last remaining piece of it that didn't melt. So somebody did something and it didn't end well. Look at that. Look at that. That wasn't carved into the mountain. That was the mountain. But it melted into itself and became the mountain. And it's funny because if you go with the resonance theory that somebody used a resonance device to melt these structures, well, that would actually be consistent with the way the rock formations look. These are the ones in Georgia. That's Georgia over in Europe, that is. Turgua, China, Bulgaria, Vietnam, and whatever this country is. They're all over the world, and they were all attacked, and it looks like they were all attacked at the same time. Here's some more examples. This is in America. That's in Peru, China, Bulgaria, Georgia. Now, here's where it gets interesting, right? After the Great Reset, the mud flood, people were talking about it, and they were talking about a resonance device being used to do it. And not only did it melt certain structures, but other structures, it melted the ground beneath them, which caused them to sink. Shout out to Stacy for the Cash App. Appreciate you, Stacy. She says, enjoying your content, brother. Keep going. Thank you, Stacy. I appreciate that. And I had another sister that hit me up on the last show. I need to shout her out. I can't believe I forgot. Because she always hits me on the Citizen Man page. Because I do have a $ Cash App Citizen Man. Or a Cash App $ Citizen Man. And that sister is Angela. Shout out to Angela. She says, an informative show. Appreciate you, Angela. But I read two, but one was from the past show, which means we got one supporter for the night. So shout out to Stacy for that. And let's see how many more we get. Now, the people were talking about this because they knew about the technology and the capabilities it possessed. And they would talk about resonance and frequencies being used to melt these structures and destroy them. I believe it was not a mud flood, but a giant resonance device that basically melted the earth and everything on it that was made of stone. And, you know, some of the stone structures sank down into the earth and others just melted into themselves. And millions of people died in these attacks, but very few survived. And I believe a lot of whom survived were children. So after the attacks, the children were then gathered up and the surviving adults and basically placed into these city centers where they would be, you know, raised up to believe that this is how life is and this is what it is, and they'll teach it to their future generations. And of course, there were always the few that didn't want to go along with the narrative, and they spoke about the mud floods. Maybe they talked about a sound they heard, or they talked about a light they saw or something. Like that story, The Night the Stars Fell from the Sky. And these people had to be silenced because now it was time to build a new world with a new narrative of what the old world looked like. Right? So the people that talked about the old world and what it actually looked like, and the old world that and the power that people possessed and the abilities that people had, those people had to be silenced. So around the 1800s, when this resonance device was used to wipe everything out and set us back to the Stone Age, literally, there were psychiatric hospitals popping up all over the country where people were being hospitalized and being called crazy. Now, some people who have studied this subject, they say that in these psychiatric hospitals, they would basically or they would basically use these psychiatric hospitals to house people who talked about the mud floods, which essentially was a simplified form of the resonance device attacks, and people who talked about the old world. They needed to silence these people. So they silenced them by creating the mental health system and the mental health hospitals. And once they created the mental health hospitals and they started locking these people away, naturally, the only people left in the earth were people who had no idea of this. Mainly the children who didn't know what happened and were too afraid to speak about what happened, and the adults who were beaten into submission who did not know or who knew what happened but did not want to talk about it. So then you have generation after generation after generation growing up with this limited technology and making do and doing the best they can and blah, 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 and struggling and making it. And then we get a little bit of technology here, a little bit of technology there. They use Thomas Edison to give us the light bulb in 1890 and blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? And they start trickling the technology back on us. And we, being the intelligent beings that we are and the innovators that we naturally are, even with the little bit of technology that they gave us, we were able to build these magnificent cities. But it still pales in comparison to what our ancestors were able to do when they were free. So I did a little digging, and it comes to find out, and I come to find out that around the time of the Great Reset, there were psychiatric hospitals popping up all over the country and steadily increasing in number. So I asked Google, how many psychiatric hospitals were there in America in the 1800s? And Google says America's psychiatric hospitals, known as asylums, grew significantly in the 1800s, with about 139 established by 1880. And every state having at least one by 1890, transitioning from small private ventures to large state-funded institutions, though overcrowding and custodial care became issues by the century's end. Overcrowding. That means there were probably plenty of people that were talking about the old world that they needed to silence. And it says it grew significantly in the 1800s, which means there were psychiatric hospitals all along. But these psychiatric hospitals, after the cataclysm, were used to silence people, in my opinion. Growth and numbers. Early 1800s, the movement for humane treatment of the mentally ill began, with early asylums developing as places of refuge. Mid-19th century. State-supported mental hospitals, lunatic asylums, rapidly emerged. 71 new ones opened in 32 states by 1875. So they were already putting the system in place to silence people. By 1890, all U.S. states had built one or more publicly supported mental hospitals. So essentially, they got the people who were willing to go along with the false historical narrative to fund the institutionalization of the people who were willing to tell the truth. It's kind of like what we see on YouTube today, right? Where they use the NPCs that are willing to go along with the narrative to flag, censor, and suppress the people who are telling the truth. It's the same playbook. And this is why it's starting to make this old world thing is starting to make sense to me, because the way they transitioned us from the old world to the modern world that we're in today, it seems to be the exact same tactics I see them utilizing today. Now, I asked how many psychiatric hospitals were there in the 1900s. And it says, while a precise single number for the entire 1900s is elusive, by the turn of the century, America had a rapidly growing system of psychiatric hospitals or asylums, with every state operating at least one public facility by 1890 and hundreds of public and private institutions existing, housing a large, increasing population under custodial care, though funding and treatment were often poor. Rapid growth. The number of asylums expanded dramatically in the late 19th century, with 139 established by 1880 and every state having one or more by 1890. State funded, most were state run hospitals, but private facilities also existed. Custodial care. By the early 1900s, these institutions often became overcrowded and focused more on warehousing patients, custodial care, than on therapeutic treatment, despite ideals of moral treatment. Varying sizes. These institutions grew significantly in size, with some holding thousands of patients. So while you won't find one number for the whole country, know that the system was well established and expanding significantly as the 20th century began, with hundreds of facilities nationwide. And you notice it was 1880, 1890 that were mentioned. Now, this goes back to the Revolutionary War of 1776. It was won by the Patriots. The Constitutional Republic remained. The free people remained. But there was still chattel slavery going on at the time, so not everybody was free. But as far as the majority of the country, they were free from the stranglehold of the king. Then in 1812, the British came in and infiltrated our government. They staged a war and they kidnapped Americans, and they used the kidnapping of those Americans to demand a ransom. And the ransom they demanded was the abolishment of the titles of nobility clause from the Constitution, which then allowed members of the British Crown to set up shop here in the United States and serve in our government. So they infiltrated us. Then sometime around there, the cataclysm happens. Then 1870 comes around, or the 1860s comes around. Slavery is abolished. So now there's more free people out in the world. And then by 1870, boom, you got the corporation formed. Right back under control again. So between that time of 1812 and 1870, the cataclysm, or whatever that event was that caused the reset, I believe it was a resonance machine that was triggered. There were people who probably were genuinely traumatized by seeing the mass amount of death around them. That'll send somebody to the mental hospital for sure. I believe it. But then at the same time, there were also people that still remained cognizant, and they talked about the cataclysm. They were telling the story about what happened with the mud floods. They were giving eyewitness accounts. But because the establishment wanted to create a false history, these people that were discussing the real history of the old world, they had to be shut down and silenced. You're crazy. Lock you away. You know what's funny? You know they do that to pilots today that talk about flat Earth. Did you know that? If a commercial airline pilot talks about flat Earth, he loses his job, he loses his pilot's license, and he gets committed to a mental facility. So let's go to Tartaria. And let's look at, I pulled an article that covers the mud flood. Tartaria and the mud flood. I actually pulled two articles. So we're going to go through and read them both, because I'm just as curious about this as you are. Make no mistake about it. Hold on, let me cam up real quick, because y'all like me better when I'm on camera. More people hit the Cash App when I'm on camera. So hit the Cash App, support the show. I'm on camera. So let's get into it. Tartaria and the Mud Flood by Skeptoid. And this article, what's the date on this? It was published February 2nd, 2021. And there's a picture right there of people digging. Look, it's a pile of rubble. It looked like shit got bombed out or something. Something cataclysmic happened. Maybe this whole city sank into the ground. Because that bell tower right there, whatever that is, looks like it belongs to a building that was much taller. So let's read this. In recent years, a new alternative world history claim has arisen from the internet, and it's a doozy. So straight off the bat, let me warn you, this might actually be a hit piece, but let's take what we can. It revolves around an alleged worldwide cataclysm believed by adherents to have taken place sometime in the 1800s. A disaster that wiped out a worldwide advanced civilization and allowed the nations as we know them today to rise up. The event was a mud flood in which several meters of mud washed in and buried the ground levels of houses and buildings everywhere. These cities and towns that were partially buried constituted the worldwide advanced civilization called Tartaria, which had free wireless energy and was populated, at least in part, by giants. Well, I haven't heard anything about giants in Tartaria, and I also didn't hear anything about the mud flood being mud that washed in. It was, what I've been hearing was, it was resonance machines sinking these buildings, sinking these cities, melting these cathedrals, and so on. Buried ground level housing building ever. Those cities and towns that were partially buried constituted the worldwide advanced civilization called Tartaria, which had free wireless energy and was populated, at least in part, by giants. It was a civilization reset. Out with the old, in with the new, and that new civilization is us. If this sounds too silly to be worth anyone's time to even listen to, then consider the fact that all of the hundreds of topic suggestions in the Skeptoid queue, this is the one that I chose for this week, and I chose it for good reason, so attend. All right, so he says, free wireless energy and was populated, at least in part, by giants. I've never heard anything about Tartaria and giants, but I do see the large doorways and so on, so I can see how that theory can pop up. And the free wireless energy. It wasn't wireless energy per se. It was ethereal energy. Energy being drawn from the ether, or what we've been taught to call it, the atmosphere. Let us begin by surveying the evidence put forth for what some adherents called mud flood theory. And this takes us about 12 seconds to do. Find any old-timey black and white photo where people are digging, particularly if there's an old steam shovel or mule teams being employed. And it doesn't even matter what they're digging. You can say they're digging out from the great depths of mud that covered their city. Then find any modern photograph of any old building that has floors below grade. especially if it has basement windows peeking out or if there's excavation going on next door, which has exposed its basement walls or foundations, and say that the building's lower levels were obviously buried by mud. I don't want to sound dismissive, but that is indeed the entirety of the evidence that has motivated these people to discard all known history and embrace this alternative version. So it is a hit piece, because he's saying that these buried windows, which are obviously buried floors of buildings which have been excavated and the floors have been cleared out and proven to be floors in these buildings, he's claiming that it's just a basement wall. So obviously he's with the establishment, and I kind of got the sense of that from the beginning of the article. But you got to think about this. If those buildings had the ground beneath them liquefied and they began to sink into the ground, and there's people out there digging shortly after, chances are they're probably digging because there's people still buried alive in those buildings. What the cataclysm could have been is it could have been a mass population reduction operation, because that's what the whole COVID thing turned out to be, right? A mass population reduction operation. Because after they got done pushing the coof on everybody, they started pushing the spoof on everybody. And the spoof killed more people than the coof. Anonymous A says, what about DEWs, DEWs? Yeah, that's what I mean. The resonance weapon was a directed energy weapon. Or it could have been a pulse weapon where it wasn't directed energy. It just sent out a massive energy wave that resonated the ground and resonated the buildings to make them melt and sink into the ground. So I'm not going to read this article because he's going to lie. He's already, I got through the first paragraph and he's already lying and making up shit. So we're going to go ahead and skip that. Because if you're going to be lying, making up shit, we're not fucking with you. So let me switch windows. Start screen share. Yeah, we're not doing the Skeptoid. So let's see what this one says. Hopefully this actually gives us some insight and not a hit piece. What the fuck is this? Okay, here we go. Great Reset Theory and Mud Flood Events. And this is from Unidentified Phenomena. So November 5th, 2024. So this outlet seems like they're going to be a little bit more objective, but we'll see. So that's a picture of a building being dug out of the ground. See, that's the ground level way up there. And there's two more floors buried beneath, covered and packed in mud. So if there were people in these buildings that got buried alive, chances are their bodies all got encased in the mud and they were never recovered. And they remained there forever. So let's read this article. Imagine our modern cities as mere overlays atop the remnants of a once magnificent civilization whose grandeur has been obscured by time and deliberate erasure. Proponents of the Great Reset and mud flood theories suggest that in the 1800s, a cataclysmic event buried advanced societies under layers of mud, leading to a global effort to repopulate and rebuild. They point to architectural anomalies such as buildings with submerged lower levels and ground structures seemingly out of place for their time as evidence of this hidden past. Theories about the Tartarian Empire further fuel the narrative, proposing that a vast, technologically advanced civilization was systematically erased from history. I believe it. I mean, right here in America, did we not watch the Indians be systematically erased from history and called colored, Negro, and black? So again, we've seen them play this game before. These ideas challenge our understanding of history, suggesting that the world we inhabit is built upon the literal and figurative foundations of a forgotten superior society. Do we live in the ruins of a once superior civilization? See, now this opening paragraph seems a lot more objective. Many proponents believe that a massive mud flood took place in the early mid 1800s, burying cities and structures worldwide. This event, they claim, led to the near extinction of the existing population, who were then replaced or supplemented with orphaned children from other areas. The orphan trains in the United States and Canada, for instance, have been cited as part of this repopulation effort. Photographic evidence, often cited by mud flood proponents, reveal buildings partially buried beneath layers of soil, as if a massive deluge of mud swept over them, leaving only the upper floors visible. In some photos in the 1800s, windows and doors appear bizarrely situated below street level, suggesting that the structures were once much taller but had sunk or been covered by soil. Many cities worldwide, from St. Petersburg to San Francisco, showcase architecture where floors seem unnaturally sunken or streets have been elevated, covering previous ground levels. Supporters argue that this is clear evidence of a catastrophic mud flood event, theorizing that cities were forcibly reset as people had to dig out or abandon buried structures, rebuilding on new layers above the old. And again, when they say cataclysm, they don't really specify what that cataclysm actually was. So all we can do is theorize as to what that cataclysm may have been. And there's another photograph of them digging out buildings and digging underneath the ground. Oh man, I got the heater going. It's getting warm in here. All right. I like these old pictures. They're pretty cool to look at. I don't know about y'all, but I like looking at them old pictures. Seem pretty cool. The narrative of Seattle's regarding the narrative of Seattle's regrading projects, especially the Denny regrade, aligns intriguingly with certain aspects of the mud flood theory, although historical records frame it as a deliberate urban development effort rather than a mysterious flood. And again, it wasn't a flood, it was the building sinking. It probably would have felt more like an earthquake than a flood. The regrading projects involved moving millions of cubic yards of earth, which buried portions of existing buildings and forced a partial reshaping of Seattle's landscape. To some proponents of the mud flood theory, these images of earth-moving machinery and buried structures appear to support the idea that a civilization might have discovered pre-existing old world buildings, partially buried by a cataclysmic flood of mud, and simply excavated and repurposed them. And this is a picture of the orphan trains. Now, where did these orphans come from? I think when the cataclysm happened, the orphans were the kids who survived, but their parents died. These were the kids who had witnessed it all and lived to tell about it. But they were just kids. What do they know? And I'm pretty sure as they got older, especially the older kids who could recount what happened, as they got older, they were probably the ones populating these mental asylums, these lunatic asylums, because it's more than likely that they would have been the ones talking about it because they were kids when it happened, and it's a childhood memory of theirs. It's childhood trauma. It says between 1854 and 1929, over 250,000 orphans were put on trains in the overcrowded East and sent out to every state in the continental United States to find new homes. Some children were pre-assigned to homes, but many were lined up at train stations for those interested in adopting or needed laborers and were selected like a lottery. Between the 1850s and 1920s, a large number of orphans were relocated across North America, Europe, and Australia via orphan trains. Some theories suggest these children were replacement humans after a major disaster. The timing of these orphan trains coincides with the proposed time frame for this reset theory, leading some to believe that a significant number of people were brought in to repopulate affected areas. Between the 1850s and 1920s, historical photos show an extraordinary movement of orphans across North America, Europe, and Australia, with orphan trains transporting thousands of children to new families in rural areas. Some theories see this as part of a larger population reset, noting that this sudden wave of relocation aligned with the supposed aftermath of the mud flood and other mysterious catastrophes. Now, what's funny is we've also seen our federal government do this very same thing. Remember when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans? Didn't they put a bunch of people and kids on planes and ship them all over the country? So this ain't nothing new. Photographic evidence of massive, elaborately constructed orphanages further fuels the speculation, as many of these buildings, often adorned with grand architectural designs more typical of places than children's homes, seem oversized for their intended purpose. The sheer size and intricacy of these orphanages, from New York to London to Melbourne, appear at odds with their function and the resources expected at the time, sparking questions about why such monumental buildings were constructed exclusively for housing orphans. These institutions are sometimes viewed as relics of a previous civilization or part of a deliberate effort to repopulate areas with young children following a large-scale population loss. Yeah, I need to look up the Cabbage Patch Kids because the imagery portrays it as if they were being grown in fields or something. But I think these so-called Cabbage Patch Kids were, again, the orphans of parents who got buried alive and died in the cataclysm, but somehow the children survived. A lot of times in multi-story homes, especially in the older houses, as a form of protection, the children, their rooms would be upstairs and the parents' rooms would be on the main floor, the master bedroom. So could that have been the case where the kids' rooms were higher up in the buildings and the parents' rooms were below? So when the cataclysm happened and the building sank, their parents got buried, but the kids survived? Could be possible. And the incubator babies, I also have to look into that because when I first saw the theory of incubator babies, what popped in my mind was, well, these were newborn infants that were rescued after the mud flood and they had to be put in incubators because, well, they were newborn babies. I don't think they were developing babies at all, T. Wriggles. I think those were babies that that they either took from mothers after the cataclysm when they were in the hospitals, or these were babies that they rescued out of those buried buildings. And they made it appear as if they were creating babies, but maybe they weren't. Maybe these were kidnapped kids. I mean, wasn't one of Hillary Clinton's people going to jail in Haiti for kidnapping kids after a disaster? So again, we're seeing patterns here, patterns of behavior from the elites in this proposed scenario, the same that are very eerily similar to the same patterns they utilize today. Create a disaster, move people around, take the kids. You know what I'm saying? Another idea popular in alternative history claims that a civilization called Tartaria supposedly advanced in spanning much of Russia, Central Asia, and Europe collapsed due to either natural or man-made catastrophes. According to proponents, this event allegedly wiped out the population of these regions, with modern powers erasing Tartaria's existence from historical records. Photographic evidence and historical anomalies have led some to believe that modern powers erased the existence of a vast civilization known as Tartaria, claiming its lands, structures, and histories as its own. Proponents argue that the 19th century map and documents reference Tartaria as a large and advanced society covering much of Russia, Central Asia, and even parts of Europe. Yet this empire supposedly vanished without a trace. Photos and records from the 1800s reveal large, sophisticated buildings with intricate architecture in religions traditionally associated with Tartaria, but which may argue were later appropriated by new governments and cultures. According to this theory, these buildings were not constructed by the new powers, but rather repurposed, with official histories rewritten to obscure Tartaria's role in shaping global architecture and culture. For instance, grand palaces, dome structures, and fortifications with no clear origin or construction history were allegedly squatted in and claimed by modern rulers who retrofitted these structures and rebranded them as their own creations, erasing evidence of an earlier civilization from historical records. Many reset theorists point to what they consider advanced out-of-place architecture from this period, particularly grandiose buildings, dome structures, and star forts worldwide. They argue these constructions are too advanced for the population and technology of the time and might suggest remnants of an earlier, more sophisticated civilization. Photographic evidence, even highlighted by reset theorists, shows strikingly elaborate architecture from the 1800s that seems far beyond the means and technology available at the time. Grandiose buildings with towering domes, detailed facades, and complex star forts appear across remote and urban areas alike, raising questions about how such structures could have been built given the era's limited tools and infrastructure. During a period when most roads were simple dirt paths and transportation was primarily horse-drawn buggies, the logistics of transporting vast quantities of brick, stone, and other materials to these locations appeared improbable. Photos show isolated towns and cities boasting massive, ornate buildings that seem incongruous with the simplicity of their surroundings and the relatively low populations of the time. Reset theorists argue that these buildings, with their intricate designs and advanced engineering, are remnants of a forgotten, highly sophisticated civilization that predates our historical record, one whose knowledge and architectural powers exceed that of the supposed builders in the 1800s. And there's the Star Fort. And this was all based on resonance. And there's always a huge cathedral on every one of these star forts that has buildings on it. And that cathedral or that church building was used with the bell to vibrate the molecules of the water to keep the water, I guess, alkaline, keep it pure, keep it fresh. And when people would get sick or get poisoned or whatever, they could drink this water and cure themselves. Bathe in it and cure yourself. Fort Bortange in the Netherlands is a remarkable example of a a geometric military design that defies conventional expectations of ancient fortifications. Constructed with sharp, angular bastions and surrounded by moats, this intricate layout was not only intended for defense, but also reflects a deep understanding of geometry, mathematics, and strategic planning. Seen from above, the fort's shape is mesmerizing, a perfectly symmetrical star pattern that appears almost too precise for the time. For the time it was built in the 16th century. Star forts like Bortange raise questions about the level of sophistication and knowledge in architectural military design during that period, with many theorists marveling at how such complex structures could be constructed without modern technology. Fort Bortange's lasting beauty and precision continue to captivate as it stands as a testament to the advanced, almost mysterious ingenuity of old world engineering. Damn, this is a long article. Some speculate that a global cataclysm, such as a solar flare or geomagnetic event, may have wiped out much of the population. According to this theory, survivors rebuilt with the help of more advanced knowledge retained by a small group. The drastic population reduction theorists argue would have been followed by a rapid repopulation aided by the influx of orphans and settlers. Photographic evidence and historical anomalies fuel the theory that a global cataclysm, perhaps a massive solar flare or geomagnetic event, drastically reduced the human population, leaving only a small group of survivors to rebuild civilization. According to this idea, these survivors were aided by advanced knowledge preserved within select groups, or perhaps with the help of non-human allies, such as the tall white beings believed by some to have intervened in humanity's darkest hours. The influx of orphans and settlers in the 1800s, often documented in photographs, suggests an organized effort to rapidly repopulate newly rediscovered areas. Images of monumental structures with designs and technology too sophisticated for the time hint at an otherworldly origin, as these buildings seem out of place, bearing architectural features thought to be beyond human capabilities of the period. My belief is that these tall white beings were integral to rebuilding efforts, guiding humanity, and possibly even constructing these original enduring structures themselves, which may still stand as remnants of a forgotten era shaped by an alien civilization. Proponents often analyze historical photographs, excuse me, particularly from the 1800s, showing empty city streets or events with few people visible. These images are interpreted by some as evidence that there was fewer people than historical population data suggest, or that many cities were abandoned and later resettled. Adding to this mystery, historical photographs. Hold on. Put my shoes back on. I had to kick my shoes off for a second. Adding to this mystery, historical photographs from the 1800s often reveal an unnaturally high proportion of young children compared to adults in cities worldwide. These images show groups of children standing in empty streets or near massive buildings with few or no adults around, fueling theories that these children may have been a part of a widespread effort to repopulate empty or abandoned cities. Some proponents suggest that these children, often orphans, were brought in from other regions or relocated en masse to help repopulate areas after a reset event, such as a natural disaster or some other mysterious calamity that decimated an adult population. The curious lack of adults and the prevalence of large orphanages or children's homes captured in period photography support an idea that following a significant population reduction, society had to start anew, relying heavily on the next generation to rebuild. To reset theorists, this abundance of children hints at a hidden history where young people were essential to revitalizing one's desolate cities, leaving behind an unusual demographic landscape caught on film. Some believe, sorry, I was looking at the pictures. Some believe that world fairs in the 19th and 20th centuries, particularly the elaborate temporary structures, were part of a plan to reintroduce technology or culture to the masses. These events are often viewed as evidence of knowledge that predates the supposed reset period. Photographic evidence of the grand and meticulously crafted world fairs in the 19th and early 20th centuries has led some to believe these events served as a means to reintroduce lost technology, knowledge, and culture to a society recovering from a supposed reset. The fairs, from the towering palaces of the 1893 Chicago World's Columbian Exposition to the ornate architecture of the 1900 Paris Expedition, featured enormous, elaborate temporary structures that seemed almost otherworldly, especially given the short time frame in which they were built. Now, I think, again, what I think about these fairs, I think these fairs were gatherings where they would get people with the technology they wanted to hide to bring in devices based on that technology and basically buy them out and couch the device, shelf the device. Okay. These buildings often showcased intricate designs and advanced engineering that to some appear inconsistent with the construction techniques of the time. Rather than merely being exhibitions of contemporary progress, theorists argue that these fairs were carefully orchestrated displays of rediscovered technologies and aesthetics from a prior civilization. The rapid dismantling of these temporary structures after each fair adds to the intrigue, as some believe this was a deliberate attempt to prevent the public from scrutinizing or studying the designs further. To reset proponents, these photographs capture not only grand architecture, but a larger plan to reintroduce large cultural elements, presenting remnants of a forgotten era masked as modern innovation. That shit. That's crazy. This image from 1901 World's Fair in Buffalo, New York, presents a stunning display of architecture with massive intricately designed buildings, and grand fountains that rival the finest structures of Europe. The official story tells us these structures were temporary, built quickly and solely for the fair, only to be demolished afterwards. However, the sheer scale, elegance, and complexity of the design make it hard to believe that they were hastily thrown together, only to be destroyed without a trace. To some, these buildings appear more like ancient pre existing structures than more exhibition pavilions. Hinting at lost craftsmanship or architectural knowledge that doesn't align with the supposed timeline, the decision to demolish these marvels soon after the fair raises questions. Why were such masterpieces not preserved? Is It's as if we're erasing a hidden history. One that suggests these temporary buildings were part of a more advanced old world than we're led to believe. Photographic evidence from the 1800s and early 1900s reveals technology that seems far more sophisticated than expected for the period, fueling theories that rail systems may have been remnants of an earlier advanced civilization. Images show extensive, intricately engineered railway networks that traversed vast and sometimes remote landscapes with grandiose train stations and advanced infrastructure in cities worldwide. Some theorists argue that the precision, scale, and complexity of these rail systems seem out of place, especially when contrasted with the relatively primitive tools and technology available for other types of construction at the time. The fact that these railways were built with such speed, even across difficult terrain like mountains and deserts, has led some to speculate that the technology behind them could have been reintroduced rather than newly invented. The photos of ornate, large scale locomotives and expansive rail yards, combined with images of immense iron and steel structures like bridges and terminals, hint to some at not hint to some at knowledge or machine hint to some at knowledge or machinery that may have predated the official timeline, casting doubt on the conventional history of rail development. All right. Photographic records from the late 19th and early 20th centuries reveal massive, elaborate airships with luxury outfitted cabins, complete with restaurants, lounges, and spacious seating areas, almost like airborne hotels. Images of these grand airships, such as the Graf Zeppelin and the Hindenburg, show interiors that rivaled the opulence of the finest ocean liners, raising questions about the level of technology and craftsmanship required to build such structures during that period. These airships were not only capable of carrying large numbers of passengers, and by airships they mean blimps, but also offered an experience far more advanced than what many assume possible for early aviation. Some theorists interpret these images as evidence that airship technology and perhaps even the knowledge to build them had origins beyond the commonly accepted historical timeline, speculating that this technology could have been rediscovered or reintroduced from an earlier advanced civilization. With grand dining halls, ornate decor, and large observation decks, these airships appeared to defy the expected limitations of early aviation, suggesting to some that they were part of a forgotten era of airborne luxury and technological prowess. So that's inside the blimp. It's actually pretty snazzy. It shit looks pretty dope. Hmm. There's a blimp flying over the Capitol. This image of the Graf Zeppelin hovering over the U.S. Capitol captures a moment that feels like a portal to a lost era, an old world of advanced yet seemingly misplaced technology. In this vision, airships weren't just novel inventions, but a sophisticated, dominant form of transportation, woven into the very fabric of urban life. The grand statutes and intricate details crowning rooftops and domes suddenly make sense. They seem designed to be admired from the sky, hinting at a world where travel by airship was common. Such modern, timeless struggle to account what such architectural elements align perfectly with the theory that old world societies possess technologies that modern timelines struggle to account for, as if their world anticipated a high altitude perspective. The presence of the Zeppelin in 1928 drifting over Washington feels like a fleeting glimpse into a past era where advanced engineering and atheistic grandeur went hand in hand at a time when humans' reach exceeded what we traditionally attributed to them. Photographs and illustrations from the late 1800s and early 1900s have led some to believe that people in that era harnessed electricity directly from the air, a technology supposedly far more advanced than the official history narrative suggests. Images showing towering, ornate structures like electrostatic poles, spires, and even domes, which theorists argue were used to draw ambient electricity from the atmosphere, similar to modern concepts like Tesla's wireless power transmission. Some photos depict mysterious devices attached to buildings or standing alone in public spaces, often with metal tipped rods or intricate metallic patterns, sparking theories that these were functional components in a forgotten system of atmospheric energy collection. Proponents of this idea suggested that instead of relying on fuel driven power, people of the time might have used a natural form of electricity that was abundant and clean, a system that somehow disappeared or was suppressed. The existence of early wireless lighting in photos and illustrations without visible wiring or conventional power sources adds to the intrigue, leading some to believe that knowledge of atmospheric electricity once existed but was later lost or hidden from public view. Big Papa says they were not all human babies. I guess you're talking about the incubator babies. A lot of them were synthetic. Some were some were hybrids. The father coming from Zoteria. What's Zoteria? I never heard of Zoteria. So they did have wireless energy, apparently. But I don't believe it was wireless energy. I just believe the energy transfer was happening in the structure that whatever the lights were connected to. Video evidence from Chicago showcase an unexpected, seemingly advanced technology, vertical parking systems. These images revealed towering mechanized structures designed to lift and store cars in a compact vertical format, and a surprising sight in a period typically associated with simpler mechanical systems. The technology's complexity, effectively stacking vehicles in high rise racks to minimize space, to maximize space, suggests an advanced understanding of both engineering and urban planning that feels ahead of its time. Such vertical parking systems would have required precise machinery and a reliable power source pushing the boundaries of what most assumed to be the technological limits of the early 1900s. And there's all the cars stacked up vertically. That's wild as hell. Some theorists argue that these photographs are evidence of a lost, forgotten era of technological innovation, hinting at knowledge that may have been reintroduced or rediscovered rather than developed from scratch, aligning with the broader reset theory narrative that advanced capabilities were hidden or phased out as society transitioned into the industrial age. Watching the footage, the scene of order, cleanliness, and elegance is undeniable. It's as if every corner has been meticulously arranged to create a picture perfect world. The people dressed impeccably and moving with a kind of redefined grace exude happiness and a genuine ease with their surroundings. It's like striking how well dressed everyone appears, presenting a sense of unity and shared dignity. Yet there's a fascinating contrast that draws the eye. Horse drawn carts and carriages navigating streets lined with grandiose, almost otherworldly buildings, each a masterpiece of architecture. This juxtaposition of simple manual transportation with such majestic, intricate structures feels almost out of place, as though the technology of the time doesn't quite match the grandeur, excuse me, sorry, of the setting. Oh, I said the settling. It's like a snapshot from a perfect world, one where beauty, respect, and an unspoken sophistication have all come together in harmony, creating a nostalgic vision that feels both familiar and strangely dreamlike. Where are we? I'm losing where I was. Okay, we're here. It is believed that all state capitol buildings in the United States, including the Iowa State Capitol in Des Moines, are remnants of an old world civilization with architectural knowledge and technology far beyond what was officially available in the 19th century. The Iowa State Capitol, with its grand central dome covered in gold leaf, classical columns, and elaborate Renaissance rival elements, raises questions for those theorists about how such structures were constructed during an era supposedly lacking advanced engineering techniques and resources. According to this perspective, according to this per, and resources. According to this perspective, the ornate dome, intricate facades, and massive scale of these capitals reflect architectural methods that were either rediscovered or borrowed from an earlier, highly advanced civilization. Proponents of this theory suggest that these iconic buildings were not built from classic. Oh, sorry. Whew, were not built from scratch in the late 1800s, but were instead repurposed or renovated by modern governments. The uniformity of classical styles, the precision of the designs, and the grandeur of the state capitals are seen as evidence that these structures could belong to a hidden chapter of human history, symbolizing knowledge and craftsmanship that our current historical timeline cannot fully explain. Look at that. The Montana State Capitol, completed in 1902, stands alone in a vast empty field, giving it an almost timeless and ancient appearance. Its grand dome and classical architecture seem out of place amidst the stark simplicity of the surrounding landscape, as if the building itself was transported from an older, more refined area. The isolation of this monumental structure with no visible infrastructure or urban sprawl around it adds an air of mystery, leading one to wonder how much and how such an elaborate building came to exist in such a remote setting. The image captures a scene of solitude, with the capital appearing almost as a relic of forgotten civilization, standing proudly against the emptiness that surrounds it. There's the White House. Nope, that's still the Capitol. This impressive building in Edmond, Alberta, Canada. Oh, that's where it is. It's in Canada. Kind of looks like the capital. Directly north of Montana, shares striking architectural similarities with other grand legislative buildings across North America. Officially, we're told that Alberta was a simple fur trading outpost during the time this structure was supposedly built. Yet the scale and intricacy of the design seem far beyond what early settlers could achieve with limited resources and basic tools. The, the imposing dome, symmetrical facades, and finely detailed columns reflect a level of craftsmanship typically associated with advanced civilizations, not human trading posts. To believe that early settlers, tasked with mere survival in harsh conditions, were able to construct such a monumental and intricate building stretches what construct such a monumental and intricate building stretches plausibility. The legislative building, like others of its kind, feel more like an ancient, enduring structure than a product of a recent frontier society, suggesting a possible connection to a lost era of architectural knowledge and sophistication. Okay, we're almost done. I believe that the tall whites, an advanced extraterrestrial race, see, now they're giving their opinion and they're using the extraterrestrial, the space alien theory, but I don't buy the space alien shit for 1 second. We're actually responsible for building many of the grand state capitol buildings and other monumental structures across the United States and possibly the world. These buildings, with their intricate architecture, towering domes, and precise craftsmanship, appear far beyond what we would expect from human construction capabilities of the 19th century. This mysterious race is believed to have significant influence over America, guiding our guiding or assisting in the technological advancements and infrastructure. The architectural mystery seen in these state capitals could be a testament to their involvement, showcasing knowledge of materials, geometry, and aesthetics that goes well beyond what would have been possible in a young nation still developing its own identity. If the tall whites had a hand in creating these iconic buildings, it could explain the timeless beauty, resilience, and grandeur that seem almost out of place in the context of conventional human history. Yeah, that old shit about the tall whites, I don't believe that either. But that's just me. And if you look up here, that's your flat earth circle right there. That's the North Pole. And these are your ley lines that stretch across the planet, across the plane. My bad. The craftsmanship and intricate details of old world buildings leave modern observers in awe. With interiors so elaborate they almost defy belief. Structures like the dome in the image above showcase dizzying levels of detail, from the layered patterns and frescoes to the richly carved stone that covers nearly every surface. Similarly, St. Petersburg Basilica, also in Vatican City, boasts towering columns, lavish gilded details, and a dome that seems to float above visitors, creating an ethereal atmosphere. In Prague, the St. Nicholas Church in Mala Strana is another testament to impossibly grand interiors, with sweeping arches, and ceilings domed in vibrant, masterfully crafted frescoes. What makes these interiors seem almost impossible is not just the complexity, but the scale. Vast spaces filled with detailed artwork, massive stone sculptures, and architectural feats that require an incredible level of expertise, all created with tools and technologies we'd consider primitive by today's standards. The sheer precision, symmetry, and imagination embodied in those spaces make one question whether these buildings were indeed crafted by human hands alone, or if some forgotten knowledge was once accessible to our ancestors. So there you have it, folks. That is the theory of the mud floods. From an outsider looking in. And he's actually right about a few things. But at the end of the day, hang on a second. Now I'm starting to lose my damn train of thought again. What the fuck's going on? I got to catch where I left off at. All right, sorry, I got it. I just had to get it back. Yeah. I believe that again, it was a resonance device that caused these buildings to sink, and it was done on purpose. The orphans came about from amongst the survivors of these cataclysms, because think about it: when there's a major disaster, especially back in the day, the men would stay behind and run the rescue missions and the cleanup operations, the recovery efforts, and the women and the children would be sent away. But in this case, the men and the women stuck around and the children got sent away to safety. And then they ended up in the orphanages. And from the orphanages, they ended up in the mental asylums because they were talking about the cataclysm, which the government didn't want anybody to know about. So I most certainly think that this old world was sunken by the elites because the elites did not want the people to become more wealthy or as wealthy as them. So they launched a reset because humans were making too many strides too quickly, and too many of them were becoming powerful. Uh oh, looks like we got a liberal homosexual in the chat. Yeah, Justin Love. It's happening again. Yeah, you don't see him? He says, "What you talking about, MAGA cult? We're talking about your mama and how we all took turns on her." That's what we talking about. And if we're a cult, why the fuck are you here? It's like you trolls come in here and you say all this terrible shit to me, but you don't even stop to think like, wait, if his channel is so stupid, I'm here in his chat. What's that say about me? I'm watching this stupid shit. Like, y'all don't think about that? Like, they really don't think about that shit. And that, because it's like, and that's the second way that they showcase their lack of intelligence, right? First things first is they come into a serious discussion saying stupid shit. And then the stupid shit they say is insulting the show and insulting me and insulting the chat, not realizing that they too are a part of it. It's crazy. He said, put me on. I need help. I know you need help. That's apparent. And I'm trying to help you right now. Listen. If you come across content that you don't like or you don't agree with, you don't have to say nothing. I mean, back when people used to watch TV and you flip through the channels and you came across a channel you didn't like, you didn't sit there and yell at the TV, did you? You just kind of changed the channel and kept it pushing, right? You didn't sit down and pen a letter to CBS and tell them they play too many soap operas in the middle of the day. You know, you don't do that. You know what I'm saying? You just keep it pushing. Because remember, if you want to insult the chat and insult the show, the minute you say something in my chat, you are now a part of the show, which means your insult reflects on you as well. But I don't think you guys really think that shit through, man. I really don't think y'all think that shit through. This is why trolling is for the lesser intelligence. And if you consider yourself of lesser intelligence, then you'll be a proud troll. And you know what? If you're courageous enough to admit that you're stupid, then kudos to you. For real, I can respect it. I can respect it. But I'm just here to teach, bro. I'm not here to convince nobody of nothing. He said, I'm not serious. I know you're not serious. I figured that out 5 comments ago, my friend. He said, or a rage baiter. No, you're not. Nah, you're not making me mad. You're actually making me laugh. It's funny. Trolls make me laugh. Because I never understood what you guys get out of that shit. I've never tried it because it's never appealed to me to go watch somebody I don't like, much yet go watch somebody I don't like and stay long enough to say something in their chat. Like, it's just never occurred to me to do that. Yeah, you're right. Got to kiss butt in this world to win. That's why we're trying to change it, bro. That's why we're trying to change it. And the sad thing is, Kobe, the sad thing is, people like you that troll people like me who are actually trying to change shit, you're kind of doing us a disservice in that sense. And you're helping to prop up the system where we have to kiss ass to survive. You know what I'm saying? So it's counterproductive to the cause. Because I feel you, bro. I feel you. You want to see things change. You want to have a better world. And I get it, man. These motherfuckers are evil as hell. They'll reset the world if we start doing too good. So we got to get rid of them. But we can't get rid of them if the people who are spreading the knowledge and sharing the information are constantly being distracted by folks like you that decide to troll. You know what I'm saying? So the same enemy you're complaining about, you're actually helping them without even thinking about it. Just like you came in and made yourself look silly by calling us a cult when your name is amongst the cult members. You know, you got to think it through, man. This is a thinking war. You know, this ain't pick up the guns and shoot each other war, or roll up your sleeves and box it out kind of war. This is a war of attrition. So you got to be a little bit more sophisticated when it comes to that and do a lot more thinking before you move. It's chess, not checkers. He says, I fuck with you, bro. No hate. Yeah, I don't hate you, man. I don't hate you. I just find the trolling to be counterproductive to the cause. That's all. And you know what? Normally I'd go off on the trolls and shit. But you know what I figured? The people that actually listen to me and like my content, they'll get the information regardless. But the people who really need the information are the ones that reject it the most or try to downplay it. So those are the people I'm going to try to reach and say, hey, just think about what you're doing for a second. Just really, really take a breath and stop and think about what you're doing. Is this helping your cause or is this hurting your cause? Because remember, I might be into politics. You might not be. But guess what? At the end of the day, we know who's dirty and who ain't. We know they're dirty and we ain't. So guess what that means? We're on the same side. So if we sit here and insulting each other and trolling each other, we're dividing ourselves, which feeds their divide and conquer. We're helping them. I'm sorry I called you a homosexual earlier. I know you're not a homosexual. I just said it as an insult, and I didn't mean it. I felt like you were calling me a cult member, which I most certainly am not. And I responded childishly by calling you a homosexual, and I apologize. I do not believe you are a homosexual. He says, are you MAGA? I support Trump, but I don't wear any labels. I support Trump. I understand what Trump's doing, but MAGA is more like a mainstream kind of thing, right? And I don't roll with that mainstream shit. MAGA is them dudes that would support Israel just because Trump publicly supports Israel, even though behind the scenes Trump been cutting Israel off of everything. You know what I'm saying? So no, I'm not MAGA. I support Trump. I support the agenda. I support the mission, but I don't play the group game. I don't. I support the mass deportation. Get them the fuck out of here. You know, I definitely support that. But when you say, are you a MAGA, right? That's like, or are you MAGA? It's kind of like a broad statement too. Because MAGA is not really a monolith, right? Not everybody in the Make America Great Again movement agree on everything. Because unlike the left, the Democrats that are anti-American and want to bring in all the foreigners to take over and shit, they're a monolith. If anybody amongst them disagrees with the agenda, they get kicked out of the group. When it comes to us conservatives, we tend to have more ability to be free thinkers and exercise more free thought. So we tend to have more disagreements on our side. So he says, oh, I get it now. You're Turning Point USA. Bro, chill. How much are they paying you, dude? I'm trying to have a sensible conversation with you, and you're acting like a real homosexual. I just got done apologizing to you for calling you a homosexual, and then you just fuck it up and start acting like one all over again. Like, bro, think, man. This guy's just I'm really, you know what? I'm not even gonna say it. I'm trying here, bro. I'm trying, and you're making it so fucking hard, dude. You're making it hard. I'm trying to give you the benefit of the doubt, and you're like, fuck it, I'm gay and I'm a retard, and I'm just gonna fuck your grace. Like, you're making it hard, man. He says, none, I'm broke as fuck on hood. They try to kill me. I'm small town famous. Yeah, I'm sure they tried to kill you because you probably did some dumb shit. I'm pretty sure they tried to kill you. Small town famous. Is it that small town where you got to go down to Old Town Road and ride till you can't no more? That small town? Bro, I'm trying to help you. Help yourself, man. Help yourself. You're like that guy that slips and falls on the tracks in the subway, and then you reach down to pull his stupid ass up, and he just smacks your hand away, and then the train comes and splat. It's like, I try to help the motherfucker. I really did. Y'all seen it. I really did. And that was totally unlike me. I don't I don't do that with trolls. I go off on trolls, but I don't know, man. Something about this good weed and this Red Bull just got a nigga just mellow. I'm just mellow right now and I'm chilling. I don't want to be calling people fuck face faggots and shit. I don't want to do that. That's bad. But this fucking guy, man, keeps tempting me. He keeps tempting me. Listen, Kobe, we love you, bro. We gonna pray for you, my man. We gonna pray for you. You a funny dude. That's a motherfucker. Try to help him. He says, I'm sub up, bro. Shout me out. I want clout. Shout out to Kobe I-120, who I strongly believe is not a homosexual. I strongly believe he's not. He could be. He could be, but I strongly believe he is not. All right? That's my opinion. And we got love. We got love for you, bro. You good. You good. You funny motherfucker. Yeah, I can get with that. 1776, we the people. And we the people have been conquered all over again. So now we have to unconquer ourselves. You know what I'm saying? Give me a second, yo. This motherfucker got me laughing till I cry. Give me a second, y'all. I got to find these videos. Where the fuck are they? No. Did they not get sent? Well, damn. Well, damn, Gucci man. Okay. Give me a second. I'm gonna see if I can upload those videos. And then Kobe, you killing me, bro. You're making this much more difficult than it needs to be. I'm trying to convince the people you're not gay and you keep acting gay. What is this? What is this? Okay. I'm going to send these to myself. Okay. So what I do is I would screen capture shit on my phone or take screenshots on my phone, and then I would email it from my phone from one email account to the next. And then I would take the email. I would open up the email, my bad, on my computer and then just download it to the computer. But for some strange reason or another, the shit's not sending. And I don't know why this shit ain't sending, baby. It says uploading, but I don't know if it's actually uploading. Well, shit me, man. Yo, Kobe, what does grape handicap symbol mean? What does that mean? I sure would like to know. Well, damn it, man. Profane like a sailor teaching biblical doctrine. I'm out. So get the fuck out then. You don't have to announce your exit. Just fucking leave. I don't know how many of my shows you've seen, but I cuss on every show. So, yeah, you can be out. You don't have to tell anybody. We really don't care. I don't know how special you thought you were. Motherfucker said, profane like a sailor, but teaching biblical doctrine, I'm out. Give a fuck. Kiss my ass. Get the fuck on. Oh, come on. So it's just not going to let me do it. Okay. I got one. Okay. How do we get back to the email? Oh, right. That's how. Hold on, give me a second, guys. I'm trying to work this magic here. Yeah, that person is funny. People that cuss are proven to be more honest and authentic. Thank you, Justin Love. Yeah, that Justin Clacker clown guy saying we are in Satan's little season with a Trump flag and 1776 in the background. All I see are red flags. Well, again, why the fuck are you? You're worse than Kobe. At least Kobe had enough sense to come around. Like, you just sound stupid. And I thought you said you were leaving. Why the fuck are you still talking, stupid? Fucking people are idiots, man. God. And these are adults, y'all. These are adults. This motherfucker is still here. Cursing isn't profanity. So what is profanity, Mr. Biblical Scholar? And I thought you said you were leaving. Why the fuck are you still talking anyway? You know what? Don't even answer that. I'm just gonna go ahead and block you because you seem to be bipolar or something. Like something's wrong with you. First you was out, now you're back talking. Like, get the fuck out if you leaving. You said you leaving, get the fuck on. Fuck are you still doing here? Dummy. Motherfucker said, I'm out. Didn't he say that shit like 10 minutes ago? I'm out. Well, get the fuck out. What the fuck you still doing here, motherfucker? Fucking people are crazy, man. And then came back and typed something else. Like, how did you even muster that in your soul to like say what you say so boldly with such conviction? I am out. And then find yourself right back in the chat typing some more shit. Like, let me say some more shit. Like be out, bruh. These people are crazy. Yeah, I had to block him. At least, you know what? I'll tell you one thing. I can respect Kobe because Kobe started trolling, but he talked with me. He came around and he tightened up and he owned his trolling. That other person, I don't know what the fuck they're on. I don't know what they on, but oof. They gotta go. Don't tell me you leave it and then come back. You know what that's like? I'm gonna tell you what that's like. That's like when when your girl come over and you argue with your girl and shit, and then she's walking out the door. She gets up, she's like, I'm leaving. And then she goes to walk out the door, and then she stops. And another thing, like, bitch, get out. Slam the door, like, get the fuck out. Did you say you was leaving? That's what that's like. That's what that's like. Kobe says his name is Justin. Nah, the funny part is his last name is Clacker. That's the funny part. Clacker. He's the nut clacker. Justin the nut clacker. Because he's over here bumping his gums and clacking his nuts. All right. So here's one video. It says Tartary did not disappear. It was erased from history by the elites. And this is one of the videos that I was able to download. So I'm going to see if I can run it for you and let you guys take a look. I wish I could make it bigger, but it's as big as it's gonna get. So you know what? Maybe if I put it on full screen, you might get a little bit more of the picture. So let's do that. All right, here we go.
Erased Tartaria. 1776 was the year everything changed. In 1776, the Illuminati was founded in Bavaria. The Rothschild banking empire began its global expansion. The American Revolution broke out. Tartaria began to disappear from the maps, all in the same year. Coincidence? Tartaria was not a myth. It was a vast, ancient civilization with advanced free energy technology, great architecture using sacred geometry, a harmonious way to live with natural law, knowledge of the ether. They buried Tartaria, literally, with mud floods, natural disasters, and a new history. Once they buried the old world, they created the new one. Central banks, slavery by debt, maritime law, artificial scarcity, indoctrination through education, all funded by the same families. The Rothschilds didn't just fund empires. They funded restarts and deleted everything that didn't serve the system of control. Tartaria was way too free, way too advanced, way too powerful. So they turned everything upside down. Not only
So this one talks about the Rothschilds taking over Tartaria or destroying Tartaria. And I believe it was those families because those are the same families that have been in power for thousands of years. Oh shit, I wasn't even paying attention to Rumble. Shout out to my man A Pouty. He dropped 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 $1 Rumble rants. So I'm gonna go ahead and read those really quick. And just another point on the on that troll that I just blocked, right? If you guys scroll up in the chat and look at Kobe's the original troll, one of Kobe's comments, Kobe said get him out. So even the first troll was like, this second troll is so horrible of a troll. Block that troll. So even somebody that almost got himself blocked saw how much of an asshole this other guy was. It was like, block that guy. That is ironic. I love irony. I live for irony. And Kobe, you have brought the greatest, most hilarious irony to this show with that one comment, bro. That shit is funny. Even the troll said block this motherfucker. Like when you got trolls saying block you, like you are a horrible human being at that point. Like you are lower than dirt by every YouTube metric. Like you shouldn't, like your profile should be, you probably don't even have a channel. Your profile should be canceled. Your account should be deleted. When you got trolls having to say block your ass, like you are terrible. My God. Anyway, my man A Pouty, in his first Rumble rant, he says, Illinois now releasing violent criminals to avoid ICE and banning ICE agents from courthouse. Tennessee election barely won. Miami, Florida, Democrat victory. We will lose. Will we lose in 2026? I don't know. I don't know, A Pouty. I really can't tell you. I don't think we will. But I do think that some Democrats are going to win. But what's going to happen is Trump is going to put enough pressure on them to make them fold, kind of like he did with Mamdani. Trump is going to put his foot on their necks. So all that bullshit that they were doing before, they dare not try it because 90% of that shit is illegal. And when they see their colleagues getting indicted and going to jail for the same shit, you think they're going to come in and do the same thing? Hell no, they're not. They're going to be too scared. They're not gangster like that. A Pouty says, how are we going to fix blue states? Well, that's a good question, A Pouty, and I hope you're still here and I hope you're listening. The blue states are being fixed right now because the congressional districts are being redrawn and all the Democratic gerrymandering that was done to create these false Democratic districts is now being undone. And the true will of the people is now being represented by the new congressional maps that are being drawn in each state. So the blue cancer spots that were created through gerrymandering in the past are now being cut out with the redrawing of the districts in a more sensible manner. And the reason why the Democrats had to do the gerrymandering is because they simply did not have enough votes in the state, or enough people spread out across the state to where they would have any adequate representation throughout that state. So they pack everybody into this tiny area. Then they take that one little tiny area and dice it up into 10 different districts and give themselves 10 representatives. So the Republicans come in and they redraw the districts. And even in the Democratic districts, where there were 7 different districts all diced up into tiny little pieces, it's now one district. So they go from having several Democratic representatives to one. So that's how they're fixing the blue states, by undoing the gerrymandering. A. Powdy also says we need to abolish public sector unions, end project labor agreements, and pass right to work laws. Perhaps. And I tend to agree with the public sector unions. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Because the union heads, when they're in league with the politicians, they don't get anything done. A. Powdy, all they do is take your money for union dues, and that's it. A. Powdy says, I never ran public transit and hope to never have to. They're forcing that shit in my state. Yeah, they're trying to force it in every state because they're jacking up toll prices, they're jacking up insurance costs, and they're increasing regulations on what is required for your vehicle to make it almost impossible to drive. A. Powdy says we need school choice. I agree, because in states where they have school choice, the schools themselves tend to perform better, because the kids can operate in a more comfortable environment rather than being forced to whatever shithole school their district happens to be in, or their neighborhood happens to be in. A. Powdy again says, will more 2A lawsuits happen against anti-gun states? Alonzo gun background checks. I don't know what you mean by Alonzo gun background checks. I guess you meant to say also no gun background checks. And when will more 2A lawsuits happen against anti-gun states? I believe it. Because all those anti-gun laws are in direct violation of the Second Amendment. So if they're all in direct violation of the Constitution, they need to be undone. But the reason why they haven't been undone is because nobody is sued to undo them. And I told you guys the formula to beat a gun charge. You first get the prosecutors to acknowledge that they are following the Third Amendment, right to due process, by even having this court proceeding in the first place. But this court proceeding is based on a law that violates the Second Amendment. So we're obeying the Third Amendment while violating the Second Amendment. And that's not the way the Constitution is meant to be applied. So if we're going to honor the Third Amendment, we must honor the Second Amendment as well. It's either the third or the sixth. I'm not sure exactly which one. But yeah, once you get them to admit that they're obeying the Constitution by even having the court proceedings, then the next question would be, why are we violating the Constitution by prosecuting me for exercising my Second Amendment right? And then watch them do all the mental gymnastics. Oh, but we have laws on the books. Oh, public safety, blah, blah, blah. But the word Constitution will never leave their lips. So that's how you get them in the okie doke. That's how you put them in the okie doke. You demonstrate the legal contradiction with the entire case, and then you motion the judge to dismiss due to legal contradiction and misapplication of the law. Or if you opt for a jury trial, you make that case to the jury rather than the judge, because the judges, it's very easy to pay off the judges. I mean, we've seen how the judge has been treating Trump and his lawyers, right? And the cases that his administration has been bringing against the deep state. So we know these judges are corrupt, and you might not get away with that with the judge. But you raise that issue to the jury, they're going to be scratching their heads. And all you need is one juror to stand on business and say not guilty. And all the other 11 jurors would say guilty. But guess what? Hung jury, you win. That's how you do it. All right, so here's the next video. This one shows a lot of the architecture and stuff. You're really gonna like this one. T Wriggle says, Citizen Man, I got a 2-minute video on the Roslin Chapel building in Scotland. The Masons or Templars didn't build this building. Yeah, no, they didn't. They didn't build any of this stuff. Because if you ask them how they did it, they can't tell you.
This was old New York in its beautiful golden age, before they rushed to tear it down. Why would they tear down these marvelous structures that were meant to stand for 1,000 years? Some being torn down in just 50. It's because we inherited this city, and those who did not construct this grand architecture could not hope to maintain it. And most of it, you would find, fell to ruin. These were all empty and abandoned cities after the last reset, the mud flood. You can even see the sunken layers in many of these pictures here. Just look at that grand architecture in Penn Station. And to think they
Hold up. So Joy I don't know how to pronounce that, but this chick in the chat says, y'all insane. How the hell you gonna preach about SLS, then talk politics after? Okay. Okay. In case you haven't noticed, young lady, the very same people that are controlling our world, they're using the political system to do it. They're using the political system to do it. They've rigged the voting system. They've installed their political puppets. So when we go vote, we don't really have a real choice because they control who gets to run for office. So when we talk about politics, we're talking about politics from the position of it's been infiltrated. How do we purge the system? Because the original constitutional system was not made to sustain such high levels of corruption. So when we talk about politics, we're talking about politics from the position of removing the corruption, returning the right of returning the true right to vote back to the people, and the right to choose their own representation back to the people rather than these two controlled political parties. So if you don't understand that, young lady, you are hopeless and you will never be free because you will continue to ignore the very same system that your enemies saw so important to take control of in order to control you. So if you don't address the gun that they have pointed to your head, guess what? That gun is going to stay pointed at your head until they decide to pull the trigger, and there won't be a goddamn thing you can do about it. So if you don't understand how all this connects to the politics, then you got to go back to square one and start all over again because you missed the main point of everything. The political system is the system of control. So if we don't address the political system, we're not really addressing the control. So if you think ignoring the politics is to your benefit, then you're hopeless. Even Malcolm X was wise enough to recognize this. That's why he talked about the 11 million eligible black voters in the country, whereas only 2 million of that 11 million actually vote. And he was saying if that 11 million actually voted, they would override any fraud and override the system and control the American political system. But most of them are too ignorant and unaware to even consider that. So again, if you don't understand that, young lady, you are not qualified to have this discussion with me because you're missing the main point. Yes, voting is real. You know, every time you get on YouTube and the person you're watching puts a poll in the chat and people vote, yeah, a decision is made. Yeah, voting is real. The only problem with voting in America is the election system has been co-opted and rigged. Think about it. Like, think about it for a second, right? If voting didn't matter and voting wasn't important, there would be no need to rig elections. You think about that for a second. If they feel the need so badly to rig the elections, then that means our collective vote does pose a threat to their power. That's why they have to suppress it. She says, actually, shadow banning and boosting subs is real. Yes, we know that. What the fuck does that have to do with anything I was just talking about? Like, this woman is completely lost. I'm trying to talk to this woman and she's just responding, just saying shit. I thought I was speaking English. I don't know. Anyway. Anyway. And I guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, if you go look at my YouTube channel and my Rumble page, there is way more research with way more valid information than on her page. But she's in my chat trying to lecture me on some shit. Ain't that something? Ain't that something? Yeah. Now she's just saying shit. You see? Because she can't argue the point. She can't bear to even consider what I just said to her because it proves her point completely wrong. And instead of saying, you know what, citizen man, that actually makes some sense. What you said in English, the language that I speak, actually makes sense. Instead of saying that, she just starts saying stupid shit. Yes, voting is real. If you stand in a room of saying voting isn't real is the dumbest shit you can say. If you stand in a room with people and they say, raise your hand if you want choice A, and some people raise their hands, and then the person says, raise your hand if you want choice B, and more people raise their hands. Guess what choice gets made? Choice B. That's called voting, young lady. That's called voting. Jesus Christ. I can't believe I even had to explain that shit. What the fuck is happening? Oh, I know what's happening. I'm hopped up on Red Bull. I've been smoking weed and I've been live for 3 hours playing with these damn trolls. That's what's been happening. God damn it. Hey, y'all really want to piss the trolls off, though? Y'all really want to make them mad? Hit the Cash App. That'll make them mad. Hit the Cash App. Shout out to Tommy Sotomayor for giving me that idea. Make them mad by supporting the show. That'll make them real mad. Vote with your dollars. Give me some votes. Yeah, let's do that. Show these clowns that this shit is actually profitable. This is crazy. Fucking crazy. If I had my guess, I'd say that girl gotta be, she can't be no more than 22 or 23. Because my daughter is 15 and she talks with more sense than that. Like, if my daughter says something to me and I explain to her why she's wrong, she'll actually admit that she's wrong. She won't just change the subject. But nah, for real, y'all, support the show, man. We only got one Cash App and we got one supporter on the Rumble rant, my man A Pouty. So we need some more support, man. Y'all letting these trolls get the best of me. These trolls over here beating up on your boy, man. They're doing it for free, man. Beating up on your boy. Y'all just gonna let them do that? Y'all not gonna retaliate on the Cash App? Retaliate. Fight back. Let's jump these motherfuckers, man. Let's jump them. All right, let's get back to the video. No goofing around.
They tore this down in less than 50 years. And you can find the same scene and the same sad story in nearly every city, not just unique to America. We all rush to tear down all these grand structures in all of our cities and replace them with glass boxes, literally tearing down paradise to put up a parking lot. while all these cities looking far different than they did in their golden age, when they were told to be built by horse and buggy. Question everything, friends. Until next time.
So those are just a couple of short videos to illustrate for you guys, the beauty of this old world construction. Oh my God, it's Justin Clacker. He came back in a dress. I knew one of these trolls was gonna be gay. I knew some gay shit was gonna happen tonight. I knew it. I just felt it. I just felt it. I just felt it. Says, thanks, it's actually Clacker. And my wife is 38. She's gonna be excited. You said she looks so young. No, I didn't say she looked young. I said she talks stupid like she was young. That's what I said. See how these trolls don't listen? See how they don't listen? They don't listen. They're just here to run their mouths. And Clacker, again, why are you back? You just can't let it go, can you? My wife is 38. I don't give a fuck how old your wife is. Your wife is stupid. You married a stupid individual. But you know what? I can see how, because you're just as stupid. She's gonna be excited. You said she looked young. And you're a bit of a cuck if you're bragging about another man exciting your wife. Like if you're letting me excite your wife, bro, something is wrong with you. You might have that spirit of a cuckold. You just got done talking all this Bible shit. Now you're coming back in my chat with your gag ball talking about excite my wife. Like, get the fuck out of here, bro. That P. Diddy shit. What you want me to excite your wife while you sit in the corner with a Yankees cap and a bandana? Like, what the hell is wrong with you, bro? Thought you was reading. I thought you left to go read your Bible. What kind of Bible you reading? What, you got the Bible open with the porno magazine in the middle, hiding it? This motherfucker. Yeah, tag team troll. They're like, tag me in. He blocked you. Tag me in. Like, goddamn, are you that? Do you need attention that bad, bro? Oh my goodness. Yo, these trolls got me cracking up tonight. They funny. They are funny. They got y'all cracking up too. Kobe says divorce her right now, bro. He's a swinger. This man said she's gonna be excited. You excited her. Like, what? Bruh. Oh man. Oh, it just gets weirder with these people. It just gets weirder and weirder. I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know what to do. Now I kind of don't want to shut it down. Kobe says I'm a trendsetter. Yeah, Kobe, you brought the motherfuckers in here. All the weirdos. They followed you. They followed the trail of baby oil. they were like they were like sniffing around on the ground like Scooby Doo. It was like that way. They saw the baby oil drips and they were like that way. And it ended up in my fucking chat room because you done greased up and came over here. It's your fault, Kobe. I blame you. The trail of baby oil. Yo, did you know in federal prison? Yeah, slipping around and shit. Did you know in federal prison you can actually buy baby oil on commissary? Yeah, I know once Diddy got in there, they were sold out. All them other dudes that was trying to get their baby oil was like, damn, man, he done bought all the shit. He done bought all the shit. They sell baby oil in prison commissary. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? Are you for real? Yeah, they was for real. I couldn't believe it. I was like, hell nah. Hell no. Hell no. Justin Love says, Diddy got his book stacked. Nah, he got his book soaked in baby oil. That's what he got. That's what he got. So anyway, did you guys enjoy the show? Tell me the truth. I don't think y'all did because we only got 2 people that supported the show. I don't think y'all really supported the show. But I hope you guys, seriously though, I hope you guys enjoy the show. And Kobe's going off. He says, I got to get screw up algorithm right. They trying to send me fed and clone me. They trying to send you to the feds and clone you. That sounds like a personal problem, my friend. I can't help you with that. I don't know what you did to them people, but you need to leave them folks alone. That's what you need to do. But anyway, I guess we're gonna close it out. T. Wriggle says, I had a great time. Someone let me borrow $1 to pay Citizen Man. Someone let me borrow $1. All right, somebody put $1 on T. Wriggle's Cash App so he can put it on mine. Kobe says, get a job. Who you say get a job to? T. Wriggles or me? I do have a job. I'm going to show you something. Ugh, in case you were talking to me. You see this right here? You know what you call this? This is a work boot, my friend. This is an actual work boot for actual work. It's not a Timberlands. They're not Timberlands. They're not Nikes. None of that shit. Okay? They're work boots because I actually work. All right? And this is my second job, making content. So, So anyway, I appreciate you guys being here. You guys have been awesome. You guys have been great as usual. Even the trolls were funny tonight. I couldn't believe it. I had a great time with the trolls. I'm gonna start doing that more often. Like when the trolls come in, I'm just gonna start cooking their ass. That's what I'm gonna do. But not like the way I used to though. I'm gonna make it a point to make them look stupid, and I'm gonna make them feel bad for trolling. And it's gonna get so bad to the point where like we won't even have to block them. They'll just be like, oh shit, can't fuck with this guy because he's gonna roast me even more. I already have low self-esteem. That's why I'm trolling, and this guy's just gonna beat me down into the dirt and make me commit suicide. So let me leave. That's what I'm gonna do to the trolls. That's how we gonna handle the trolls from now on. Ain't we lucky we got them? Good time. Cody says, steel toes, you're going to be like Dion. Nah, these aren't steel toes, bro. I actually got these because these military style boots are like ultra light, but they have really, really good grip. And I don't work with heavy duty materials like that to need steel toe boots. Like whenever I do like brickwork or masonry or anything like that, I hire labor and have the laborers fetch all that shit. I don't fuck with none of that heavy duty shit no more. I don't. That's labor's job. I do the light shit, like collect the checks and shit. That's what I do. Make the phone calls, drive the trucks. That's what I do. Yeah, Kobe, you owe me $1, bro. You came in here trying to troll and you lost. So now you got to pay up. That's what I'm going to start doing. I'm going to start playing a game with these trolls. Hit the Cash App or I'll block you. You don't hit the Cash App. For everybody else, it's optional. But for you, you owe me. Kobe says, I need to save for a lawyer. Well, that dollar ain't going to make or break your ability to get a lawyer, my friend. In fact, I'm probably the best lawyer you ever going to have. Maybe I can help you. I done got motherfuckers out of federal jail. So, it is what it is. I can help you. But you owe me. So you better hit that Cash App. Because if I see you again, I'm going to block you. I'm like, where my dollar at? You know what? Fuck that. Block. That's what I'm going to do. Start extorting y'all. Start extorting y'all ass. My audience can slide because they cool, but you trolls, man, I swear to God, if there was a way to hack y'all Cash Apps, I'd take that $13 out your account. I swear I would. I'll start with 20, and if it declines, I'll go down to 10. I'll clean you out. Don't have no gas money in the morning. None. You don't go to the gas station like, yeah, I'm gonna throw 5 in the hoop. Then you go to work. You ain't even gonna have 5. Your ass gonna have 2.25. Clean you out. Kobe says, "Oh God, what's your info?" The Cash App is it's in that little banner at the bottom of the screen, scrolling across, and the link is in that black box at the top. Just click the yellow where it says Citizen Man TV, and all the links are dropped down in the box. You can just click the link and support your boy, man. Kobe, you know what? That's one way you can. That's one way you can redeem yourself. If you pay me, we cool. You can say whatever you want. As long as you pay me, we're okay. I think you're like the first troll that I actually like was able to win over. I think you are. maybe that's why I feel so good about myself tonight, because I actually won over. Like, look at that. Would you look at that? He actually listened. How about that? I done called him gay and all that, and he's still rocking with me. Like, all right. That's a strong brother right there. All right, that's a real dude right there. He just, he just came in on one, but we calmed him down. Hit him in the gut a couple times, calm his ass down. Now we're gonna pass him a shot. Like, here you go. Calm that shit down. Oh, there goes the Cash App, Kobe. Somebody dropped it, man. Somebody dropped the Cash App link in the chat. So shout out to Lord Spike. So Kobe, you better pay up, fella. But y'all, I'm about to get up out of here. We've been going for almost 3.5 hours. You guys like the old world content? Do y'all like that kind of content? Because I love it. I'm a big fan of the old world and the reset and all that shit. Because just like when I learned about flat Earth, I had to like completely reimagine creation, right? I had to completely reimagine the cosmos. I had to let go of the whole, outer space, the planets, the aliens and shit. Now that I'm studying the old world, now I have to let go of all those images that were put in my head from the movies, from those historical films, right? Like the horse and buggies and the dirt roads and the shacks and the lanterns and all that stupid shit. Like now we got to let all that shit go and reimagine a completely different world with not only, modern technology, but probably even better technology than we have now. More efficient technology, because they didn't have to pay no electric bills back then, but we do today. So they were better off than we were. Trey Finesse says, I like the old world content. Can you mention the great fires that happened in the late 1800s, 1900s? You know what? I'm going to look into that, Trey Finesse, because I believe that the fires were caused by whatever weapon it was that they used to sink those cities and sink those buildings. I believe the damage that was caused by that cataclysm is what sparked the fires, unless the fires were deliberately started in conjunction with the cataclysmic event in order to maximize the damage. Because they do that too. We've seen them do it in California, right? Where they cut off the water, cut off the power, and then sent in the dew lasers to start burning everything down. Everybody is in the dark. They can't even use their garden hoses to put out the little fires that started on their front lawns. And all they could do is helplessly watch their houses burn down. So it could have been the fires could have been used as a catalyst to maximize the damage. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I really love the old world stuff. I do. I really do. Because I like the idea of reimagining everything that I was taught. Because I know now that everything that we were taught in school, 95% of it is nonsense. And if what we were taught is all crap, any alternative theories that may arise that seem to have evidentiary value, that seem to have legs, I'm going to investigate it, because if what we were told and what we thought we knew is not the case, now we have to investigate every avenue. It's like the adopted child that spends his whole life thinking his adoptive parents are his parents. Then he grows up and finds out they're not his parents. Now he's got to go in search of his real parents. And every person that pops up that says, "Hey, I'm your biological mother, or I'm your biological father," he's going to take that DNA test, right? He's going to investigate because he wants to know who his parents are. It's just like us with everything we've been taught. We've been taught lies. Now that we know they're lies, any little bit of truth that we might come across, we have to investigate it in order to get the real story. So I think that we're on the right path. And funny enough, the old world content is going to lead us right back into flat earth. And I think that's a beautiful thing, how it all ties together, because more and more people are starting to awaken. More and more people are starting to realize that they've been bullshitted and they've been lied to, because the lies just keep getting more and more ridiculous. And that opens the door for us now to be able to answer those questions that the newly awakened people are going to have. Because being awakened doesn't mean, you now know everything that's going on. Being awakened simply means that you know what you're being told is not true. You know that you've been lied to. That's it. That's all awakening is. You're no longer asleep, but you don't know everything. Sometimes you ever slept on your bed the wrong way, or fell asleep on the couch or something, and you woke up on the couch, but you forgot you were on the couch for a second, and it took you a little while to realize you were on the couch. So just because they're awakening doesn't mean that they have a sense of direction, or they know where they are, or they know what's really going on. So they awaken to the fact that they've been lied to. And now it's our job to try to make sense of that confusion, alleviate that confusion, and give them as many facts as we can to fill in those gaps. And a lot of times that's all they need to really start their investigation, because once they realize the shit they've been taught don't make no sense, and you start teaching them some shit that makes sense, that light bulb's going to go off in their heads, and they're going to run with it. They're going to start investigating. And then we're going to have a population of knowledgeable people that actually know what's going on. And that's what we want. That's what we need. Because if we have a population of knowledgeable people, that means when this old world technology starts to be rediscovered and re-released again, we'll know what to do with it. And we won't have to depend on the system or the establishment to teach us that, because they might take advantage of it and re-indoctrinate us all over again because we're dependent. So being independent is key. Kobe says Citizen Cult TV. Kobe, where my dollar at, man? I don't want to hear shit from you till you give me my dollar. Where my dollar at? I'm serious. You playing. That's all I got to say to you. Where my dollar at, bro? Tell me shit. Except I got your dollar. Once you start with that, I got your dollar, then we can talk. Till then, everything you say, where my dollar at, bro? But yo, I'm gonna get up out of here, y'all, because y'all funny, man. Y'all got me cracking up over here. I didn't even drink no liquor or nothing, man. I just smoked some weed. They had a 12-ounce Red Bull. I'm good, man. I am up. But anyway, I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate the love. I appreciate the support, most definitely. And I'll see you guys on the next one, man. We've been hanging out 3.5 hours, 3 hours and 34 minutes. You believe that? It didn't even feel that long. It really didn't. But yeah, check out that Rumble stream. Let me show it to you guys one more time before we go. I almost forgot. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick for y'all. Can y'all see it? Nope, y'all can't see it. There it goes. That stream right there. Ancient technology to modern slavery. Conquering our world by captivating our minds. Make sure you guys go check that stream out over on Rumble. If you don't do anything else, go watch that stream. Screenshot it so you don't forget the title. It's a pretty lengthy title, but make sure you go watch that. If you like the old world content, that's a good one for you to go check out. All right. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, oh, T Wriggle says, don't forget about my lunch break channel. Drop your link, T Wriggles. Drop the link to your lunch break channel right now. And I'll tell everybody to go subscribe to you. But you got to make it quick. It's not quick enough. I don't see it, T Wriggles. Oh, you don't got it. Oh, you gotta bounce over there. Well, I'll tell you what, man. You copy and paste that link into like your notepad on your phone or something. So that way, when I go live on Friday, you'll have it ready, and then we could promote it. So we could shout you out and promote it. All right. All right, y'all. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate the love. I appreciate the support. And I gots to go. And Kobe, I don't want to see you back here until I see that dollar in my Cash App, bro. I'm serious. And if I see you in real life, I'm going to press you. All right. So with that being said, peace, love, and I'll see you on the next one. Stay away from the baby oil. Do not follow the baby oil trail. If you see a trail of baby oil going in one direction, you go the other direction. Okay? It's not safe. All right? So with that being said, I'll see you guys next time. Citizen Man, out.